Hello and welcome to the Punished for Protecting Live broadcast with your host, Francesca Amato, national expert in the Americans with Disabilities Act, domestic violence and child abuse advocate, best-selling author, and founder of Punished for Protecting Incorporated. We welcome all of our viewers watching on Facebook via Punished for Protecting News and the CPS News Network. If you're watching on YouTube at Punish No More and Free to Protect, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. You can also find Punish for Protecting News on Rumble. Now, without further ado, here is your host, Francesca Amato.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. I sure do hope you hear me. If you do, please give me a thumbs up or a hello or something so that I know that you do indeed hear me. This is a very important live. So if I can just get some comments below before we begin. All right, wonderful. So I'm your host today, Francesca Amato with Punish for Protecting Incorporated. And I'm thankful that you guys hear me. I have women waiting in the queue and women waiting in line, okay? If you did not get this information, and I see that my moderator cannot get in, we'll get you in. We'll get you in. If you did not get this information, it is important that you go on my Facebook page, Francesca Amato, I think it's under Francesca Amato or Francesca Amato Banfield. All the information is there. We have already spoken to several Congress members regarding this situation. It was our best year yet. This is truly an epidemic against women and children, and it's been this way for several decades. It's getting increasingly worse. Okay, I would like to read a poem before we begin to my audience today, and this will give people the time to go and read the instructions to see how to enter into the StreamYard so that you can tell your 7-minute story to the Congress members. This will be going to all of Congress. You were each sent a video with instructions on it. If you didn't watch it, you should have watched it. Like I said, I did that because I cannot respond to each and every one of the high amounts and volumes this is happening to. So you'll have 7 minutes when you get on the screen, and then I have to kick you out because the StreamYard only allows 10 guests at a time, and that includes me. So that's like 9 at a time, but we will get through this. I want to first address each and every one of the Congress members that this briefing will come to. You're going to hear a pattern of abuses to mothers and children. Anytime a mother reports abuse, anytime, she is called a liar and crazy. We just had a huge, I believe it was a psyop. I believe it was a setup. I believe it was to destroy women and children further. Huge trial that was on all the news with the starry-eyed girls that love Johnny Depp, even though he is an ongoing severe drug addict and has had numerous accounts previously. Not saying she's perfect, no one is, but she was immediately called a liar and crazy. And thankfully, there will be a new trial, because did you know that there were 5 Oriental jurors left? I believe 3 were men and 2 were women. That says a lot, because we do know that that is a very subservient nationality. And I would like to know how that was fair and just. Okay. And I know that people and the bots that were out there were pushing this narrative, which is more dangerous to women and children in the future, no matter what side you believed in. And first and foremost, I'd like to read this, and I would like to thank the Congress members that are watching today, because we have a goal here, and that is to strip the family court of its treasonous actions, recompense back to the families over the decades of abuse that they have done to families. I want to make it perfectly clear, because one of the gentlemen that we spoke to in behind the walls of Congress in the meeting room, he too was from a single mother, and he turned out to be an upstanding human being. The father's rights playbook, if you will, or handbook, if you will, has been, and does it through churches too. And I am a strong Christian. Obviously, my Christian faith is all I am. That doesn't mean that people don't interpret things incorrectly or say things incorrectly, but they try to use the humanitarian portion of father's rights. Fathers should have rights. Fathers are born with rights. But when you're an abuser, okay, that's what the Fathers' Rights Organization does. They buy them suits so they can present themselves. It's just a whole ongoing thing that's been happening for decades, okay? And this is why women are losing their children to abusive men. Children are going into the hands of abusers, or the horrific and horrible child trafficking industry, which is what this whole thing is, of foster care. It is not care. CPS, child predator or child pedophilia services. This is not good in any way, shape, or form. And so we want this system taken down because it is illegal on our national soil. It was never voted in by the people. It is treason. It never does good. I'm a national advocate. I've sat in courtrooms all over the country, and I am an expert in this. And it never does good. So one of the lies that the Fathers' Rights Movement says is that all children that come from fatherless homes become drug addicts, they become unsuccessful, they become impoverished, they're behind bars, they're in prison. And that is not true. That would be true of children that have been suffering from having their loving, protective mothers and fathers stripped from their lives that protect them and love them. Good people, good men and women. Good men don't strip mothers of all their rights to their children and torture them through family court. That would be what an abuser does. And this is the pattern that we've been seeing for umpteen years. And that's what I stand for. So fathers, if you think I don't stand for you, I sure do. I believe in God's order, and I believe in the protector, okay, when he's a protector. And when he's not, unfortunately, the woman has to take on that role. And there's a lot of biblical scripture that supports that as well. We are warriors. So we're going to strip them of their rights, and I'm going to read some of this, and that's what we the people want. We do not want to reform this. We never have. Maybe years and years ago when we didn't know any better, now we do. And we have the right to tell Congress to strip the lower courts of their judicial and all their jurisdiction because of the fact that this is all treason. So again, we were inside the walls of Congress. We had several meetings. We had to come in small teams because they do not allow everyone to come in, obviously, at the same time. So this is why we're doing this. And then we're going to present this to all the Congress members. You also can take this video when it's done. It's on my YouTube channel. It'll be on Rumble. It's on the Punish for Protecting news page. I'm sure Danny's going to share it on CPS News Network. And it's here if you're watching it on my regular Facebook page. So share it like wildfire. Ladies, when you come in, make sure that there's no sounds around you when you come in. And if you're trying to get in to tell your story, just keep trying to enter the StreamYard. Give it some time right now, because obviously we're talking, and watch as the women are done with their speeches, and then try to get in so we can bring you in and as women exit. Thank you very much. Grandmothers and aunts, you're welcome too. Okay, I'm going to read this by Emma Bombeck. When God Created Mothers, by Emma Bombeck. When the good Lord was creating mothers, he was into his 6th day of overtime. When the angel appeared and said, "You're doing a lot of fiddling around this one." And God said, "Have you read the specs on this order? She has to be completely washable, but not plastic. Have 180 movable parts, all replaceable. Run on black coffee and leftovers. Have a lap that disappears when she stands up. A kiss that can cure anything from a broken leg to a disappointed love affair. And 6 pairs of hands." The angel shook her head slowly and said, "6 pairs of hands? No way. It's not the hands that are causing me problems, God remarked. It's the 3 pairs of eyes that mothers have to have." This really touches my heart, and it's hard for me to get through this poem. "That's on the standard model?" asked the angel. God nodded. "One pair that sees through closed doors when she asks, 'What are you kids doing in there?' when she already knows. Another here in the back of her head that sees what she shouldn't, but what she has to know. And of course, the ones here in front that can look at a child when he goofs up and says, I understand and I love you, without so much as uttering a word. God said, the angel touching his sleeve gently, get some rest tomorrow. I can't, said God. I'm so close to creating something so close to myself. Already, I have one who heals herself when she's sick, can feed a family of 6 on 1 pound of hamburger, and can get a 9-year-old to stand under a shower. The angel circled the model of a mother very slowly. It's too soft, she sighed. But tough, said God excitedly. Sorry, 15 years of trying to help families and knowing what's going on in the system. You can't imagine what this mother can do or endure. Can it think? Not only can it think, but it can reason and compromise, said the Creator. Finally, the angel bent over and ran her fingers across the cheek. This is a leak, she pronounced. I told you that you were trying to put too much into this model. It's not a leak, said the Lord. It's a tear. What's it for? It's for joy and sadness, disappointment, pain, loneliness, and pride. You are a genius, said the angel. Sorry for my dogs. Somberly, God said, I didn't put it there. So I think everybody can feel that. And I'm going to now move on to my first guest.
Hello, my name is Nicole Young. I am from North Carolina, and I am a wife and a mother, and my life has been turned upside down by CPS. There must be a change in family court systems. There needs to be the same standard and protection as criminal and civil as there is to be in family courts. The fact that my children were taken from me because I was found guilty in family court the fact that my children were taken from me before I was found guilty in family court has destroyed my family's life. Because I wasn't, I'm sorry, I'm nervous, y'all, just bear with me. Because I wasn't found guilty, my case was dropped and charges dismissed, but some of my children are still gone even when I wasn't found guilty. We must do better at protecting families and children because children like mine are being punished for things that have never happened, and these children are suffering. When is family court going to send my other children home because I have never been found guilty of these said charges, and my family has been separated since December of 2018. 8,760 hours in a year, but yet I only received 52 hours per year. And yet, even that time can be taken from me on the custodial guardian's whim. It's okay for family court judges to bend the rules when it suits them, but they cannot do right by my children or other children. They even made us register as abusive parents, even though we weren't found guilty of any of the charges. They gave my ex custody of my older 3 and knew they didn't even live with him, but it was the easiest route for the courts to go, so they didn't have to involve the person who is keeping my older children now. Please tell me why my family continues to suffer and when there will finally be a change. 7 minutes is not enough time to describe the trauma that CPS has put us through, but I have done my best to sum it up, and I hope to see some changes. And I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to what I have to say.
Nicole, thank you so much, sweetheart. And I'm going to ask you to exit the StreamYard so someone else can enter, and God bless you. My next guest is Tina, I think I'm saying it right, Salinas, and she also is who did our t-shirts, which we didn't get to sell any. So if anybody wants to buy those, they're available. Tina, let me try to get you on here. StreamYard is acting up. Okay, there we go.
Hello, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Tina Salinas. I am a protective mother and warrior. I started a group, We Are the Voice for the Silenced and Afflicted, in reference to an ongoing biased and inadequate care of my son's case. We had originated the case when my son was 1 month old, who is now 6 years old. Dad had proceeded to show behaviors that were just a 1 month old child. I had to strip Dad of allowing cutting a thick skin of nail. He had dropped in the tub. He would pick at a circumcision. Within these things happening, I had contacted CPS, his primary doctor and pediatrician, along with child advocate centers to get involved. I had exhausted all resources on helping my son at that time. At that time, Dad had proceeded to bring me into court, accusing me of not allowing him to visit his child. I was not allowed any time to speak on my behalf in reference to his accusations. Biasness was already prevailed in the court. And unfortunately, although I asked for Catholic Charities, and even though they had abided at that time, Dad refused. Months later had went by, and on Dad's own account, he had refused to be in his child's life. Almost a year had went by, and when Dad did come by, I allowed him in, but I supervised him. There was an incident that happened that I had to contact CPS. Dad was left alone with my child. When I returned back in the room, my child was hanging out of a second-story window with no screen on it while Dad was facing in the opposite direction. CPS, the police, doctors, everybody was involved. I was specifically told by CPS and police he would not be indicated due to me walking in the room and saving my child's life. We proceeded for court. I had suggested in court that Dad go to immediate Catholic Charities for supervision due to the issues that had arisen back when my son was 1 month, along with some certain issues that I had witnessed while supervising him. I was denied immediately. Dad was given supervised visitations to me. Mind you, I was in a 10-year domestic violence marriage with him, and I had already explained that to the court. I did not make the domestic violence a part of my court case, but I did want them to make aware that I did not feel comfortable visiting with Dad and supervising Dad just because of what he had went through. I had went 3 years to get over him. Unfortunately, the courts had mandated me to supervise Dad in a public place, which within that happening, I had recorded certain incidents while he was being supervised, also taking pictures showing that Dad had no interest of his son. And it was mostly just to control me. The courts continued to deny any requests that I had asked for supervised visitations. I was told that if I wanted supervised visitations in Catholic Charities, that I would have to pay out of my own pocket. I explained to the judge that I am visually impaired on disability along with no child support given. And I was told that I cannot use that as an excuse on record. Dad at that time was now giving unsupervised visitations for an hour at his house. My son screamed, cried, and continuously begged to not go with Dad. At this time, of course, a couple years have gone by to where my son is like 3 years old. I have all the recordings and the pictures proving my son refused to go with Dad. I had to force my son screaming and crying in a car to go with his abusive father. When my son returned home on his first visit, excuse me for getting emotional. When my son returned home on his first visit, his ribs and were bruised excessively. I had immediately called cops, CPS, the doctor, along with proof of pictures and a time stamp, so he cannot accuse me of doing it myself after my return home. The doctors indicated abuse. CPS indicated abuse. I also took him to the Child Advocate Center. They had requested I filed an immediate petition in order to modify visitations. I was denied. Within that denial, I was retaliated against. Dad in that court date was giving not only unsupervised visitations, but now weekend visits. The first weekend visit, My son had cancer. His whole forehead was bruised, black and blue. Mind you, no other abrasions proving he had fallen or harmed himself. No abrasions on his arms, legs, hands, feet, or what have you in order to prevent himself from falling if that's what had happened. Again, I had repeated the steps of calling CPS, taking him to the doctors, allowing the police to come and take pictures for themselves. Again, modified the court order in order to get Dad supervised. I was retaliated against one more time. Dad was given another day of access of unsupervised visitations over the weekends. It went from Friday, Saturday to Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I continuously each weekend dealt with this repetitive incident where my son would come home, to the point to where my son came home for the last time with both of his legs with the same bruising or ankles. He could only walk when he came home. And when I took pictures and called the cops and said that he either was restrained or harmed in the same exact spot, I didn't get any help. I again went and told the courts, I want to modify my situation and Dad needs to be supervised. I was told that we have to take all positions and modifications, wrap them up in something, bring a hearing forth. I agreed to doing that. When the hearing came about, which was last year, around March 3rd to March 5th, I had provided numerous amounts of evidence. There was stick notes, pictures, everything explaining on the back, including videos to my lawyer. Unfortunately, due to being on disability and low income, I have had to fire 3 lawyers because they don't seem to be working in my best interest. When I had given the opportunity to my lawyer to take on the case, she had agreed to provide all evidence. Unfortunately, the first none of my evidence was to play. The only evidence that was showed to us was a picture that Dad had provided with him and his son. When the hearing started, Dad was allowed to speak from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock through his testimony. The courts had made the hearing based on his domestic violence with myself, his past partner, and his ex-wife, along with his abuse that his other children had endured, that they were stripped, his rights were shown with corporal punishment that he had admitted to. When it was my turn to speak, you can clearly tell the judge had no interest in anything of what I was saying. The next day, we were postponed in order to speak on my behalf and testify. I was giving one question, and as soon as the question asked, which the judge had asked me about the domestic violence that I had went through, I had to explain that to her. She had cut me off, told me they were going to re-adjourn the case. When they took a short break, my lawyer had got on the phone, which I have a 45-minute phone conversation recorded, with her pleading and begging me to stop the hearing or the judge is going to favor in Dad's side and give him full custody. I felt I had no choice, was against the wall. I couldn't understand that Dad was not held accountable. Why throughout all the testimony, neither his lawyer, my lawyer, the judge questioned him about any of the bruisings or afflictions that my son has dealt with and endured. My son is now in counseling. He's been in for the past year. His behavior, his anger, his character, his well-being, his God-given right to be a child, been stripped. When he comes home, he is totally different. His behavior, he hoards food. He screams in the middle of the night. He urinates on himself or around us. These are things that a child should never have to endure. Domestic violence and child abuse is very real. And for some reason, it's not a coincidence. It is systematically designed, and it is destroying the mere fact of a human being, our moral and God-given right to protect our children. My child should be able to go to his father's house and feel comfortable and not scared. He should be able to come home and act like a child. We have the Constitution for a reason. What is the point of upholding the Constitution and a judge taking an oath if they refuse to abide by it? My son is hurt. I am hurt, and we are exhausted, and we have had enough.
Thank you so
much for the time, Tina Salinas.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thank you so much. If you can let yourself out of the StreamYard and then you can turn it on and watch it. We do appreciate your testimony. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm bringing on my next guest, and as I'm trying to do this, I just want to note that the Supreme Court ruled that children also have the right, have rights, and that are protected by the Constitution. I'm going to be bringing on Tammy, and just remember, guys, please, you have 7 minutes. We want to be able to fit everybody in, and let me just add Tammy to the stream. Hammer versus
Good morning, friend.
Egenhart, 1980 is Bill of Rights Institute. Congress has gone so far.
I can't hear you anymore, friend.
Tammy, you could go ahead and start because it's messing up for me. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, basically, my name is Tammy. I've got 2 children that have been sexually molested, and both of which CPS was involved with and did nothing to prevent it, or even after the fact, provide services for us. We're involved with family court in front of Anthony McGinty, and it's just been abuse after abuse. He does not take in consideration any kind of evidence. I can go and put a petition in for an emergency order, and the other judge will put in place an order of protection, and McGinty will remove it. There was a criminal contempt order of protection from a criminal court that was supposed to be for 5 years because of domestic violence. McGinty had removed that as well. And I fought and I pleaded with him to not allow visitation with the father being unsupervised, and he ordered it anyway. And when my youngest daughter, came home from one of those visits, she had said to the father that he had hurt her pee-pee spot, and I had taken her home, and she had blood coming from her rectum. I had taken her to the emergency room, and they ended up sending us back to our primary care for her to have a colonoscopy done, which I did take her for that. And it was supposed to have been being investigated through the CAC, the Child Advocacy Center of Ulster County. And it was a fight to keep them investigating. I ended up having to go back to the sheriff's department, and the sheriff there, when I told them that they were dropping the investigation, the sheriff had said, no, they're going to do their effing job. And he says, I'm going to go kick the bee's nest. And they ended up closing it anyway. They called me and said that it was closed. I still, to this day, which this was in 2019, have not received any kind of documentation for any of the investigation, whether it be closed or what the findings were. So it's just crazy. I had a stroke while trying to fight with the court to not allow visitation based on the domestic violence stuff. And during that stroke, while I was in the hospital, Judge McGinty had given their father custody. Despite me being in the hospital and my lawyer asking for an adjournment so that I could be there for the proceedings, he denied that and gave custody over. Had I not left the hospital against medical advice, my daughters right now would be in foster care because the father never even went to the school to pick them up. He didn't even answer the phone when the principal had called for me to have permission to take my own children from school. The principal ended up sending police officers to his home for him to call the school to give me permission. And during the court proceeding, my sister was present in the court and was trying to tell the judge that the father has no license, no car, and is not able to have the children where he lives because he basically rents a room in a house full of other people that rent bedrooms. It's like a trap house, and nothing but drug addicts and scumbags live there. But, he's not even allowed to have kids there. And when my sister was trying to tell the judge that, Anthony McGinty said to her that if she becomes involved with this case, she will be arrested. So I'm sitting in a hospital 45 minutes to an hour away, and the people, my family, the children's family, who is caring for the children in my absence, is being threatened with arrest. So, long story short, Jim, the girl's father, literally said to the judge that that's not what he wanted. He didn't even want custody. And we had went and withdrew our petitions, but yet, years later, there's still a visitation order in place, which their father never once has exercised. But as a way of abusing me still, is taking me to court saying that I'm violating the order of protection. We haven't moved. My phone number has been the same for 25 years. So he needs to come and do what he needs to do. And the judge, when he was trying to violate me for that, told him, and the court order actually states in there that it is the father's responsibility to facilitate any of the visits. And even though the judge knows that he's violating that order, he didn't do anything about it. And the children's guardian at Lightem even knows that the father is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. But the lawyer had said, even in front of the girl's therapist, that the judge himself told this lawyer, the children's lawyer, to let the parents' lawyers fight it out. Well, I'm sorry, you're the girl's lawyer and you're supposed to be representing them zealously. And for you to take the judge and not do your job, that's a whole stain on the family court as well, because none of the actors are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
No, they're not.
Or
So Tammy,
following
can you hear me? I have to move on to the next one. I appreciate you so much. Just one quick question. Thankfully, your children have never been out of your care, right? That's the one thing we can say. And has anyone helped you whatsoever in any of this, aside, anyone at all help you?
The only one that has helped me through all of this has been you and the girl's therapist. CPS would not help. The Congress people tell me that it's not their jurisdiction, which is baloney, because according to the Constitution, they are supposed to be giving oversight to all of these judges and the actors. and they need to take their jurisdiction and their power and authority back and get rid of these treasonous courts. The CPS is garbage because they do not do anything to protect children. It's just a big farce, and our children are suffering because of it. And the whole system, the family court system, CPS, all of it needs to be abolished. And checks and balances need to be replaced. The Constitution needs to be followed, because there is no right that any of these quote unquote governmental establishments have in telling any one of us how to raise our children. And it just needs to stop.
That's right.
Listening,
well, I'm going to read all those
listening.
laws short at the end of this stream today. Thank you so.
Oh, she's gone again.
Thank you, Tammy. We appreciate you.
Hey, Jody. I'm going to let myself out.
Okay, well, you did great. Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. I did not mean to kick out Tammy. However, what's happening is every time I go to add a new parent, it kicks me out for some reason. So we have on the screen. Jody Graesser, go ahead and tell your story.
Hi, Fran. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Congress, for listening to my story. My name is Jody Graesser.
Hold on one moment. I need a comment from someone because Jody sounds like very choppy to me. How does it sound to you guys? Give me a message. Can you put a comment? How does Jody sound? Can you hear her?
You are choppy yourself. And I can hear myself being choppy as well.
Okay, Jody, go ahead.
Okay, so what were you able to hear so far? I guess I'll just continue to talk. So, hi, my name is Jody Graesser. I'm classified disabled and a protected class member, as well as my son, Landon Fuller. My 10-year-old son and I have been victims of the Erie County Family Court in Buffalo, New York by Judge Sharon M. Lavallo, CPS, DSS, and their paid affiliates to destroy my son and me from standing up for our rights and freedoms. My son has been bounced around abuse to abuse and forced foster care in 2+ years, at least 9 different places. Connor's Residential Treatment Center staff there has physically abused my son and nothing's being done about it. Proof of abuse is being ignored. He's been slammed on his back on the stairs, slammed on the ground, thrown into walls, slammed on the bed, deprived meals, sexually assaulted, threatened, beaten up, black eyes, etc. Judge Lavallo ignored proof of abuse and sent him back to where he first was enforced a place December 2nd, 2019 lawlessly. Dr. David Nathanson was paid to lie and falsely diagnosed with delusional disorder. 9 others in Erie County and Niagara County were also falsely accused mentally by Dr. Nathanson to terminate parental rights lawlessly. This corrupt system has continually violated me and my son's ADA rights for my case be a landmark case. It's so criminal. I'm also suing Judge Lavallo in federal district court for violating my ADA rights and discrimination against me. All because I refuse to give my son the chickenpox vaccine against a religious exemption and 2 medical exemptions to go back to a special needs school with special services denied by all. I asked for help making out an IHIP plan and was denied by school unless I gave my son the chickenpox vaccine. No negotiating with them. It was their way or they would threaten to take my son. Very criminal. I never knew my life in America would be this way, abused by government instead of authoritative entities for demanding the laws be followed in which protect me and my son classified disabled from being abused by them, in which I rightly stand against. A Supreme Court ruling says I am to be left alone to raise my son as I feel feels best without any government interference, basically. That's not the respect I'm getting in this country currently. I thought our freedoms and rights had to be respected without punishment by anyone. But I know now that a loving, protected, critical thinking mother will be punished for being a parent and standing for the moral compass, in my opinion, everyone in the USA should follow. Being the right example led for their children. I'm asking you to do whatever you can to end our torture. I didn't neglect my son. I'm not delusional. My evidence proving my innocence is being ignored. Witnesses, documents, anything that proves this is all a farce of Erie County Family Court and its paid actors destroy a natural family that's disabled for profit and continued abuse of power. I've been denied to share all of this in the courts. I command that family court, CPS, DSS, and all paid affiliates of them be abolished and giving us victims recompense so we can start our journey to our healing that we deserve. You don't terminate parental rights, or maybe they'll hurt their child in the future. You don't terminate parental rights because of a false diagnosis of delusional disorder. You don't terminate parental rights because of false diagnosis of neglect. You don't silence witnesses and documents proven innocence. You don't ignore real abuse of this corrupt system. You don't cover up child abuse in the system. You don't take children without hard evidence of abuse. You don't allow allegations and assumptions to ruin natural family and children for life. Because of your corrupt system, kids are dying needlessly. Kids are growing up to be addicts and hard criminals because they are raised in the system to accept being incarcerated and dependent on drugs because they are forced to in your corrupt system as kids, against their will and their natural family too. This has to stop with me and my classified disabled son. We command that family court and the foster care system be abolished, replaced with Fran Amato, my 80 Advocates plan, for healthy, happy children and true abuse kids get the help that they need. Return my son home to me where he's always been safe and his disability needs are met. Get him out of abusive corners now. My parental rights restored, neglect charge dropped, all of this end and allowed to start our trauma healing therapy as soon as my son Lana is returned home. I already have this plan in place with my mental professional team. It is being blatantly ignored. Please end our torture and all of this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. You did excellent. Thank you very much. Jody, I just want to say one more thing. You are also an author of several books. Can you just quickly just mention that so that the Congress members know what you're doing for disabled people?
I taught my son how to read because his special needs school was not able to do it. I had to make my own beginner's book because some of the Dr. Seuss beginner books were too difficult for him to start to read. So I made my own beginner's book. It's called One Cat, One Dog, and One Ham. We started there, and my son said that it was easier for him to read that book than it was the previous books I had him read. And then from there, I taught him how to read Green Eggs and Ham. From there, I taught him how to public speak at 8 years old. And he was able, and Facebook, it's on live at one point. And so anyways, one of the evidence that we were put in my mental health TPR trial was better communication amongst friends. And it teaches about effective communication versus ineffective communication. When you're dealing with people that are high special needs, learning disabled, autistic, PTSD, brain injury from trauma, and trauma could, you could get learning disabilities from trauma. But anyways, you have to effectively communicate with them. You have to meet them at the level that they're able to understand. So you're able to talk to them in a way that you both understand each other, that I'm feeling validated in my feelings and my concerns and my thoughts and my beliefs. And you're respecting them because you may not agree with them, but you are to respect them. Because again, the Supreme Court says that you are not to tell us how to be parents. And that's the thing. And so I'm very dumbfounded that in the mental health TPR, trial happened shortly after we had a permanency hearing, and Judge Lavallo literally saw my son interact the symptoms of autism and blatantly ignored it. Even my attorney, Jeff Harrington, said that he believes that he is on the spectrum, even though he's not a psychologist. And he even sat there and looked at Vera Vankova, Lana's attorney, and said, basically looked at her the same way. That, how could you say this mother is delusional about her son, her thinking her son is autistic when he is acting like he's autistic in the courtroom and you're denying that? It blows my mind. And it's so, blew Jeff Harrington's mind as well when the judge came back that she was terminating my rights. So, and I also want to point out the pervasive development disorder was diagnosed with my son and his T-score. It's a psychological school testing back, I believe, in 2017 or 14. Don't quote me. But along those lines, there was a time frame before my son, he was diagnosed with that. That is also mentioned in his IEP in forced foster care at Build Community School. So for Madison Ozell Esquire to say in my mental health TPR trial that Landon was never diagnosed with autism, you are a freaking idiot. And I'm sorry that I say this because I am very angry that you guys are allowing this to happen to our children and to our natural families, and especially the disabled. You are to protect the disabled. You are to protect the poor. You are to protect the elderly and stuff. That we are the ones why your funding is there. Okay, because you are supposed to be helping provide for where we are, and you're doing absolutely nothing. So back to the pervasive development disorder is super important because that is a form of high functioning autism. That is also a form of mild autism. For you to say that he's never been diagnosed with that, to ignore the evidence that I've tried to present to you, to try to deny that my son is autistic is absolutely criminal. You cannot say that somebody gets to terminate their parental rights because they think their kid is autistic, or that my son is vaccine injured, according to Dr. Judy Mikovich, world-renowned, a vaccine maker. She also, testified in vaccine court as an expert witness. She was also denied in my trial. My son's health symptoms of the different things he's done since 3 months old and continued on. Some of them were medical diagnoses. That was denied in my mental health TPR trial. How do you allow evidence that is my innocence proven to be denied in my supposed trial? How do you not allow a trial by jury of my peers to have an unbiased judge, to have an unbiased court? None of that happens in family court. It needs to be abolished now. Thank you.
Jody, thank you so much. And before I bring on the next guest, and thank you, Jody, if you can just see your way out. Thank you so much. Dr. Nathanson has diagnosed over 9 people that we know of with delusional disorder. Delusional disorder is in less than 1% of the entire population, everyone. And yet everyone that's involved in the family court in Erie County, Judge Lavallo and the other judge that's up there are all diagnosed with delusional disorder. I'm bringing on Jacqueline now. I'm just trying to get you on here. Takes a minute.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Jackie. Guest, go right ahead.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, members of Congress, Ms. Francesca Amato, founder, CEO, and national advocate with Punish for Protecting, to the protective mothers and women who have endured unspeakable abuse in an effort to protect their children, and to the good fathers and men who stand with us as allies in this effort to abolish United States family courts. My name is Jacqueline Mcleod, and I am privileged to speak with you today from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Today, I am speaking on behalf of my nieces, my niece who is the mother and my great niece who is the child, both of whom are suffering great harm as a result of a custody decision in favor of the father just weeks ago. The biological father has been primarily absent from the child's life. He was absent during pregnancy. He was absent for the first 3.5 years of her life. Then in 2018, he decided he wanted to have visitation with her. He was granted ample visitations during the year she was ages 4 and 5, at which time he decided to join and enlist in the military. At that time, he went on record stating that he could not have custody of any kind. He could not have physical custody. He could not have legal custody. At that time, the mother and biological father communicated well. He left for basic training in the spring of 2019, and then within a few months of his absence, my great niece began acting out in a sexual way with her mother. When her mother asked her where she learned to do such things, the child named her biological father. My niece contacted CPS and filed a report. Immediately after that, the biological father filed for full custody. With the help of myself and my husband, my niece was able to retain attorney Carrie Bailey, who in 2014 was named the legal honoree for Champions of Children in this Hampton Roads area. She referred us to a professional play therapist who is a licensed clinical social worker and who has gone through additional training and vetting to be considered an expert in the eyes of the courts. 2 years passed with no court hearings. During this time, my great niece provided a number of consistent verbal and nonverbal disclosures of sexual abuse to her play therapist, always identifying her biological father. The child also disclosed that his now wife was present in the home during the abuse and was aware of the abuse. At this time, COVID was causing a lot of chaos for everyone. The schools were in and out with virtual learning, and my great niece was showing signs of a learning disability. With approval from her mother and with assigned power of attorney, my great niece began residing in our home, and we enrolled her in a private school located near our house where she was able to get individual academic support. Logistically, I was very easily able to provide that transportation for her. We were working very well as a family to support all of her needs in a holistic manner. In time, she was identified as having a learning disability and an IEP was established for her. The child's guardian ad litem, or GAL, who is the court-appointed representative for the child and who is to make the best decisions for that child, was fully aware of all of these details. She was aware of the living arrangement, she was aware of the child's IEP, she was aware of the power of attorney, and she was aware of the many disclosures from the play therapist. We finally had a first hearing in February of 2022, just a few months ago. By this time, my husband and I were also petitioners, and we subpoenaed the play therapist for that hearing. We also filed a motion to have Ms. Amato as an ADA advocate present in the courtroom virtually. In that hearing, the guardian ad litem submitted an official GAL report to the judge based on a false narrative, which immediately biased the judge. In that report, the guardian ad litem said that my husband and I had kidnapped the child. She implied that we were thieves. She stated that we were abusing my great niece, and then verbally stated to the judge that we were manipulative. The judge, who was at that time and may still be under judicial review related to wrongdoing in her last position on a parole board, refused to permit Ms. Amato into the courtroom, citing confidentiality concerns. From there, my husband and I were dismissed from the courtroom. Within moments, as a favorable gesture to the father, his wife and mother-in-law were welcomed into the courtroom. Neither of them were petitioners, which was, in my understanding, an immediate violation of confidentiality. After this, the play therapist, who once again is a licensed clinical social worker and an identified expert in the eyes of the court, was fully discredited. 2 years worth of notes were completely discarded. There was also a second therapist involved in the case. This was a court-ordered reunification therapist. This therapist also recommended at that time that visitation should be stopped between the child and the biological father. This recommendation from the second therapist was also discarded. A no contact order was placed on between my husband and I and our nieces, so we could no longer communicate with them or have any contact whatsoever. And then in the days after the hearing, my husband and I were threatened with criminal charges. Within several weeks of this February hearing, based solely on false narratives and hearsay with no evidence, my niece lost custody of her daughter to the father. He was granted custody, while she is now currently court ordered to have supervised visitation. He is also the named supervisor, and these visits are only occurring at his convenience and his leisure. This father, who was absent 7 out of 8 years of the child's life, who resisted child support for years, who never had custody one day in his life, with a documented history of the child disclosing sexual abuse, who resides in another state, and who is listed on the Virginia Child Abuse and Neglect Central Registry for a finding of neglect by CPS in 2018. This is the person that this family court judge and this guardian ad litem have determined is a superior custodian than my niece, who has done nothing wrong. Within hours of this reckless custody transfer and with the empowerment granted to him by the judge, the GAL, this biological father ripped this child away from her mother, her loving family, her school, her beloved teacher, her friends, her special education teachers, her church, and her community. He uprooted her to another state, and without her mother's consent, he began homeschooling her. He continues to shield his address in this other state and has violated her mother's legal rights in a number of ways. At the final hearing, he informed the court that he would be assigned to Korea, and he fully intends to move my great niece there this November. He has pressured my niece into signing a passport document. Currently, she is refusing, but that does not mean that this biological father couldn't just file a motion and a judge could override her legal rights, granting him permission to take this child out of the country. What the court has done is create a counterfeit family. They have done harm to a child, a mother, and a maternal family, and this is nothing short of heinous. This story is not unique to my family. These horrors are happening across the country and in many nations around the world. It is a global problem. Months ago, I would have never believed that this was going on in family courts in the United States of America. I made the false assumption that the safety and well-being of the child is paramount to decisions involving custody outcomes. I was egregiously wrong. I am here to share my story, to shed light on this issue, and to demand that family courts be abolished in this Commonwealth of Virginia and across the United States of America. I am also here to humbly ask for help. I appeal to you, Congresswoman Elaine Loria, to take an interest in this case and to help a vulnerable child who is undoubtedly in harm's way. Thank you, Ms. Amato, for the professional and personal attention you have given to our case and our family. There have been moments when I literally could not get out of bed because of the grief and the overwhelming attacks that have come to me and my family. Your emotional support and your wisdom breathed new hope into our situation and has kept us fighting. And thank you to you and your team at Punished for Protecting, to include the intake specialist and chapter leader, Ms. Hannah Morris, for your tireless advocacy of mothers and children across the country for the sanctity of the family and to protect the sacred bonds between mothers and children. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak today. God bless.
Jackie, thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
I'm going to bring in, thank you. It kind of stops me each time. It looks like next is Giovanna. If I can get you on here. It's moving slow for some reason. Probably because there's so many. There you are. Give it a second, everyone. We're going to bring our next guest in. This is Giovanna Contini.
Hello. Can you hear me, Fran? I don't know. Bobby Joe, can you hear me?
Yes,
no, thumbs up. Awesome. Hi. I guess Francesca's frozen, so I'll introduce myself. My name is Giovanna Contini. I live in New York in Clinton County with my daughter. Our 6-year-long fight for justice has been happening in Essex County. And I'm pleading with our listeners and with Congress, particularly Congresswoman Elise Stefanik, who is of the 21st District here in New York, which covers Clinton and Essex County, to please stop these injustices because innocent children are suffering, my daughter included. When I first left our abuser 6 years ago, it was such a dangerous situation that I couldn't even stay local. I fled to a friend in Ulster County. I knew we'd be safe there. Our address was protected by the court at that time. A hunt ensued. My abuser filed a missing persons report on both had to put at a local police station. My abuser ended up petitioning to change the Essex County because of that judge's reputation of removing children from good mothers. In Essex County, approximately 6 months or so after leaving, where I had an order of protection and our abuser was only 1 to 2 nights of supervised overnight visitation. Immediately upon walking into the Essex County courtroom, my abuser was given almost half time with our child unsupervised. Shortly thereafter, the judge then dissolved my order of protection and forced me to move within 20 miles of my abuser within a 4-week period under the threat that I would have my child removed from me altogether and I would only see her on weekends if I did not comply with this order. He said this without ever hearing testimony, without ever looking at evidence. And he said this based on my abuser's false allegation that I left him to have an affair. I didn't have an affair. Even if I did, that's not a justification to remove a child from custody. On the day of our trial, I walked into that courtroom, hoping that the judge would see that I moved like he asked me to. I was able to, thank God, transfer in my job so I wasn't unemployed. I secured housing. All of that, I followed his direction. I hoped he would see that I truly was looking out for my child's best interest. Instead, he made the statement that he did not believe I left my abuser because of domestic violence, but rather he believed I left for other reasons. He then told me that it would be in my best interest to settle on 50-50 custody today because if I chose to bring it to trial, I would lose a lot more. So this judge had already made up his mind about what he was going to do. He would not entertain any evidence, any testimony, and had already decided that domestic violence was not happening in this case. Over the last 6 years, my abuser has violated this order multiple times. I have petitioned the court for custody over and over again on factual things that have occurred that have put my child in danger, that have caused my child to be neglected, that have caused my child severe emotional and mental harm. And each time I am forced into a settlement by this judge because he refuses to take any testimony, he refuses to hear anything, and yet he does not require any evidence or testimony from our abuser. He takes any allegation that him and his attorney dream up and he takes it as fact and does not require any proof whatsoever and then makes rulings or forces me into settlements based on these false allegations with the continuous threat that I will lose time with my child if I do not agree to this. My child suffered immensely. My child has developed adjustment disorder, depression, anxiety. This is documented. My child has spent time in the children's mental health unit at our hospital because of suicidal ideation. And even that, my abuser is making the case that I'm coaching her to pretend to be this way. Additionally, our abuser was accused of sexually assaulting his girlfriend's then 12-year-old last year. A CPS and criminal investigation ensued. The exact words the investigator said to me were, "There's plenty of evidence of domestic violence against you and other women. There's plenty of evidence of sexual abuse against you and other women. However, sexual abuse against a minor is a serious thing. He could lose his job and it's just his word against hers, so there's not enough to press charges." So nothing happened. This poor child was ultimately silenced. This child's biological father is in and out of jail. So she truly has no support system and no adults in her life that are looking out for her. My child is still suffering. My child is afraid of their father. My child is under constant scrutiny. There were cameras that were reported in all of the children's rooms. at his home. These were reported to the judge, to the attorney for the child. Nothing was done. He was simply told not to have cameras in the room, but there was no accountability there for that. There's been reports by the children that there are guns all over the house, sometimes locked up, sometimes not. They've allowed, dangerous activities, little children riding on four-wheelers without helmets, very unsafe activities, has not been involved in any medical care for our child over the last 6 years, nothing. And yet, we're constantly threatened to have my child removed from me altogether, even though I'm the one that's providing the stable care and environment for this child. It's been absolutely horrific. This past January, when I was in court due to the petition I filed for custody after sexual assault allegations, my abuser's attorney told the judge that I simply coached his daughter's friend to say all of those things, and that I coached her to get into the mental health unit at the hospital, and I coached her through that somehow. And also that I started the CPS investigation and that I started the criminal investigation. Of course, none of that's true. It doesn't even sound true. It's absurd. And yet I was sanctioned $1,000 by this judge for it. This judge entertained a conversation for how to prevent me from ever filing for custody again. And then told my ex to go ahead and file for sole custody because he can clearly establish a history of me causing him emotional harm. So every time I'm a mother, it's my job to protect my child. And every time I've tried to do that, this judge in this county has completely silenced me, ignored evidence, will not let me testify, won't let experts testify, doctors, counselors, etc., won't let anybody have say in this court. He has made up his mind that he wants to take that child from me and cause her further harm. And this needs to stop. That we do not need another generation of broken adults from broken childhoods. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on. And can you just say the county and state one last time, Giovanna, if you don't mind?
Yes. It's Essex County in New York State.
And also, have you had any help from anyone whatsoever? Any other outside help or any other help?
No help.
No help within the court system at all?
You're the first person to help. Yep.
So all this time that you've been suffering this is no help. It's just absolutely absurd. Thank you again. I'm going to bring on Hannah.
Absolutely absurd. Thank you.
Just give it a minute because it takes a second to load. So Hannah is who's Jackie actually thanked earlier. She is my intake specialist, as you know. Cindy is an amazing production assistant that we have. I don't know what we would do without her. I just lost Hannah. Did she hop on or did I lose her? No, there she is. I do need a camera on though, Hannah.
I thought it was.
Otherwise I'd have to kick you out. No one without a camera.
It says it's on.
Okay, is that you, Hannah? Okay.
It says it's on.
I'm just making sure it's you. It's not on. Me. Camera on.
It's not on. It says it's on.
No, it's off. But it's you, so I hear your voice, but we don't see you.
I'm stopping it and then okay, what about now?
No, we don't see you at all.
Oh, how annoying.
You would see yourself.
Oh, gosh, it says, okay, here we go. It says start camera. I pushed it. You don't see me.
Now it's off completely, and when it's on, it's just a camera picture.
How crazy. Let me try on my phone. I'm going to switch to my phone.
Yeah, but if you do, isn't it going to knock you off the StreamYard and you'll never get back?
I don't know. Let's see. I mean, I can just talk if I have to, but it's not.
Just talk, please. Just talk.
Well, so I'm rattled hearing all these ladies, even though I have so much experience with all of you. And, I want to say, I love you, Jackie. I love you, Francesca. It's just a lot to hear all this stuff. And I'm so here I am now on my phone. Does that make a difference?
No, because you're not in the StreamYard on your phone. So go
Hold on. Hold on a second. Oh, now it's just telling me it's full. Okay, well, I'll just talk. I mean, it's working on my phone, but I think because I'm in on my computer, should I close it on my computer? Does that help?
Brought on and you don't see or hear from me, that simply means go ahead and talk. Go ahead and talk, because we're having problems just because of the fact that there's so many trying to get in. But we do want your stories before Congress. They need to hear from you. Now, Hannah's been kicked off accidentally. So what I'm going to do right now is just bring in the next guest, which I just get this thing loaded. And Amy, if I get kicked off, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to start talking. Just start your 7-minute speech, and then I'll get Heather. I believe Heather.
I'm
Did it bring you
Amy.
on, Amy? Let's see. Should be. There you are.
Hey, I'm Amy. I'm from North Carolina. I've dealt with 2 different counties, with Mecklenburg County and Cabarrus County. And my situation is unique because I've been doing this for 14 years and I'm repetitively doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing to me 10 years later in a different county. So in Mecklenburg County, I was 6 months pregnant and I had a 1, 2, and 3-year-old, and my ex-husband pulled me down a half a flight of stairs. And then after trying to get help, went to the court and claimed I was abusive. So these abusers will act like you're the abuser when you tell on them. So it's been a repetitive cycle for 14 years. I have 6 children now. I had a fake nanny that I've never done drugs, never smoked a cigarette, waited to have sex till I got married. I have been a critical care nurse and ER nurse for over almost 2 decades. And then I went back and got my nurse practitioner. So now that I am a nurse practitioner, my ex-husband has now trying to get me to pay him. So it goes from kidnapping kids, trying to claim you're abusive. Once they prove that you're not abusive, then they want you to pay them. So my story is a little unique in the sense that my first ex-husband's family are multimillionaires. My second ex-husband actually was paid $50,000 by the first ex-husband to be a private investigator against me. I didn't know until I had 2 kids with him. And my second kid was 2 weeks old and he tried to commit suicide. And right before he tried to commit suicide, he told me all of this. So now I'm in court with 2 exes. They both have the same lawyer, a same crooked lawyer, Jay White, that is over child support, DSS child welfare, and the school board. This crooked lawyer has opened up a fake DSS case on me. He's tried to make me pay thousands of dollars a month to my ex-husband. Now I have a court order saying that my second ex-husband that actually had a really bad drug and alcohol problem and was really harassed and attacked by my first ex-husband, the whole marriage, it has become worse of a person probably because of him. That narcissistic attack wasn't just on me, but also on him. He ended up going to jail for 6 months and for attacking me, has 2 criminal charges of assault on a female, on me and my sister. He's beat up a police officer, all these kinds of things. In a domestic violence court, sat on stand and said he was going to kill me on stand. But yet this judge gave me a court order now that says I have to pay this man that abused me and his lawyer $85,000. And by April 15th, their plan is if I can't pay this amount of money to them, then they'll take my kids from me. So I have 6 kids total, 4 with the first husband, 2 with the second. When I got planned to get remarried for the 3rd time, the first husband started taking my older kids again, the 4 older kids. So there was a period of time, 2 different times, both in Mecklenburg County, both again in Cabarrus County, that I had supervised visitation of my older children, but I had sole custody of my younger children. And my younger children have supervised overnights with my second ex-husband, because, I mean, he threatened to kill me on stand, so he can't give him like these other cases. He did it in front of him. But the crazy thing is in jail, he was painting the walls with poop, the floors with poop, walking around naked, broke the sprinkler system in the jail, got another felony charge for doing that. But yet he got to sit on stand and say what our assets were. And again, that's my same problem. My discovery is just null and void. I wasn't allowed to use my discovery. I had paid, $74,000 in a bankruptcy completely and fully by myself. My debts were more than my assets, but yet I have an order that says I'm supposed to pay this man this drastic amount of money. And this Jay White has now done custody court cases on the same day at the same time. This will be now the 4th time on August 15th. They're trying to get me to pay thousands of dollars a month to my first ex-husband for my older kids that I now only have every other weekend, where I had a week on, a week off for almost 7 years, because he couldn't attack me for my second ex-husband. Well, it was over 7 years, but since 2015, I guess 7. So he couldn't attack me for him because he put him in my life. So he couldn't take my kids over that person because he put him in my life. So I kind of actually had a little break for a minute. And then now it's like the minute I have actually my husband now is a missionary work and a preacher, and like totally just a total different opposite person that's just doesn't drink, doesn't do drugs, whatever. But if you would look in my court hearing, it acts like I'm the one that drinks. I'm the one that's abusive. He gave me a black eye. I had black eye bruises everywhere. And then all of a sudden the same week, he started to claim, my second ex-husband tried to claim I'm the one that punches people in the face. And my first ex-husband called and made a fake claim to the police saying I punched my daughter in the face. And they called the police. My daughter even said I didn't punch her. They then 6 months never opened a DSS case until 6 months later, because they falsely, I've had now twice, a consented guardian ad litem opened on me, both in Mecklenburg County and then 10 years later in Cabarrus County. I didn't even know. They tell you it's ordered by the judge, but if you go back and look at my order, it's a consent. So you're actually paying these lawyers to do it to you. So I've got more justice pro se than anything else, because the lawyers want you to keep paying. I've paid $250,000. He's paid over $1 million, trying to destroy me. And I'm now at a point where they're threatening me that if I don't pay this money to them by August 15th, they're taking all 6 of my kids and I'm going to jail, and I'm going to lose my job and my career and everything else. So it's got to stop. And something was happening yesterday. I had court yesterday, and there was 2 people, like I've been going, telling everybody to, but there was 2 people sitting on the front row of my court system. I've talked to the Senator Newton. He said his assistant said he was going to file with the Department of Justice, the internal affairs. There were 2 lawyers on the front row watching yesterday, and I did an appeal, and they won't, because I'm a pro se person, they keep trying to turn my appeal. Well, finally, after reporting to all these people, even the ACLU came and talked to us in March, and then again in May. So I'm praying that these big wigs are going to help us, and because there's just so much corruption, where this guy is over the school board, he's over DSS, he's over DSS child welfare, he's the criminal lawyer, and he's working as a regular lawyer. I mean, you're wearing all these kind of hats, and the crazy thing is the judge has no power on his own seat, because they come in and they'll sit in my courtroom while he's giving us verdicts and stuff, because they don't want to they want to intimidate even the judge. It's crazy. Like, the judge has no power on his own seat. So I really felt like for the past 14 years, it's been more the monopoly behind the scenes than the judge, because they're just creating this lie for the judge. I mean, I know in the medical world, if you come in as an EMS provider and you tell me as an ER doctor or something that, you know, this, and this is wrong with the person, and they really have like high blood sugar, and you say they have low blood sugar, or you give them the wrong information, whatever you're going to do to them is going to harm them. So it's the problem is there's no accountability. And then the police, then the court system, you know, I paid $15,000 to my lawyer. Then a couple of weeks later, he's like, if you don't give me another 25, then I'm just not going to show up to court. So if you go to the hospital, to the ER and say, I'm having a heart attack or I had a stroke, if they said right on the spot, if you don't pay me $25,000, I'm not going to treat you. I mean, it's the same thing. So why is this world allowing it? Like, why is it? It's killing people, and it's you know, harming mothers
It's the child
and children.
trafficking industry. It's child trafficking.
Yes,
it's the child
definitely.
trafficking industry through the family court. That's what it is. Amy, thank you
Definitely.
so much for your story.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Bye. I think we're paused still. Just keep fighting, everybody. Keep fighting. Keep standing up for yourself. Keep doing what you can do. I appreciate that. I think I have to leave.
Give me 1 second, my friends. Okay, so it knocked me out, and I hope it didn't make me lose my guest. Did I lose my guest? I was trying to bring in Sierra. I don't know what happened. Just bear with me. I see all the rest. Ironically, it keeps knocking me out, and I'm trying to bring in my next guest. I don't even know what happened with Amy, but just if you guys can bear with me, I'm waiting for it to load, and my next guest is Sierra. It's just loading slow, and it's probably because there's so many waiting, and there's so many in the queue. So let's see if I can get her now. I definitely want to get all of you to tell your story, and it's too bad if you have to sit through a 3-hour briefing. That's just how it's got to be, but they're used to it. Congress members are used to it. So let's see if Sierra, are you on? I believe you are. I think your volume might be off. Soraya, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I even said that. Okay, you can go ahead. It's cutting me off, so you can go ahead.
For having me on. So my name is Soraya Satell. I am a protective mother to a 4-year-old disabled child, and we're caught in the middle of a corrupt racketeering ring in El Dorado County in Northern California. I left my abuser that put my child's life in danger daily. He abused me for many years and threatened that I didn't want to know what he would do if I ever tried to leave him. This from a drug addict who hoards hundreds of knives, weapons, and guns. We're in a racketeering ring of collusion and corruption by court players. They decide how they want the outcomes of cases to go at the very beginning to make sure that they can get as much money as they can. Despite the domestic violence and hellish nightmare that my child and I are living in, the attorney's main objective was our assets. I was charged thousands and thousands of dollars for the attorney to repeatedly ask me to verify all of my assets, right down to garage sale prices. Although I had an attorney who for many months would dangle a restraining order in front of me like a carrot, my attorney never once tried to get a restraining order to protect my child and myself, even when she had personally witnessed the abuse. Instead, a domestic violence center obtained a restraining order for my child and myself within a few days of calling them. The court forced me to participate in what they call a child custody recommending counseling mediation, with my abuser, even though such mediation is inappropriate in a domestic violence case. The court and my attorney said I had to participate or else, and that it was for the best interest of my child. Yet this mediator didn't contact a single care provider that she said she would, such as my disabled child's pediatrician or any members of the autism care team. The mediator attacked me solely based off of what the father had told her, and then wrote her recommendations to the court based off what the father told her and what he wanted. Her report had more than 80 errors and proven lies, including the fact that she told the court my name is Emily. For years now, the court has refused to throw this report out and uses it to make harmful decisions about custody and visitation for my disabled child with an unstable and abusive parent. The lawyers and the judge colluded, and they used this report to lose my domestic violence restraining order. I had 2 lawyers send me to hearings. They did not submit any evidence, no declarations, and even though they had been paid to do so. I had a lawyer tell me not to let the court know that my child and I are part Native American, or else things would turn out bad for us. Our court is located in Hangtown, where there are nooses hanging and posted all over the main street. Protesters are allowed to hang nooses in the trees at the steps of the courthouse without police intervention. Noose stickers are posted all in the courthouse parking lot, as well as white supremacist graffiti to greet the visitors of the courthouse in that parking lot. I made complaints to the DA's office about the mishandling of my case by this judge and about Barbara Newman. Barbara Newman's a guardian ad litem with a very bad reputation for hurting children and families for profit. Then I later find out that this judge is married to the lead supervising investigator in the DA's office. And the judge later appoints Barbara Newman as a guardian ad litem to represent my child, despite my objections of the conflict of interest. The appointed 3111 custody evaluator, Stephanie Stilley, also took my money and did no work. She recused herself from my case when I made a complaint to the Better Business Bureau, and I recorded and transcribed Stephanie Stilley and submitted to the court and to the Board of Behavioral Sciences one of her quote-unquote sessions in which she attacked me, she verbally abused me, she called me names, she lied, and she violated my child's HIPAA rights. Yet only the judge, Jamie Pesci, and the guardian ad litem, Barbara Newman, didn't care and wanted her to continue with this evaluation. I found out that this judge, Jamie Pesci, went to high school with my husband and his friends in this very tiny town in which we live in. I have requested Jamie Pesci to recuse herself 3 times, and I am now leading the petition to recall Jamie Pesci from her office. This judge still refuses to remove herself because she's trying to hide all the mistakes that she and these corrupt court players have made at the expense of my child's life. All of these court players have been assigned one after another to supposedly help each other investigate domestic violence, abuse, and neglect, and supposedly investigate the best interests of my child. Yet not one of them has done any type of an investigation. They make statements that they are not concerned about domestic violence, neglect, or abuse. These racketeering court players just keep charging thousands and thousands of dollars, putting us in deeper financial debt, disrupting our daily peace, and forcing us to live in a constant hellish nightmare. My child is repeatedly forced to have unsafe, unsupervised visitations for no other reason than to the financial incentives for this racketeering ring in Northern California, El Dorado County. Jamie Pesci, Barbara Newman, Stephanie Stilley, and Rebecca Nelson. Thank you.
Soraya, thank you so much. And Soraya, would you mind telling anyone that's watching any help that you have received from anywhere?
I've received help from the Center for Violence-Free Relationship. They helped to get a restraining order for me with their lawyer, Layla Cordero. And the judge and the attorneys colluded to get rid of that. And although Father has violated the protection order that was put in place, and then if he violated that, the restraining order would be put in place. They refused to put the restraining order in place, so he continues to harass us. And other than the Center for Domestic Violence, the only other help that I've had is from Barry Goldstein, who's he's an expert for domestic violence, and from you, Francesca. You've been by my side, you've spoken up for me, and that's been the most relief that I've had throughout this whole ordeal.
I hope that we've given you hope, though, and strength.
Yes.
That's
and
good.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on, Soraya, and thank you for your story today.
Thank
for
you.
Congress.
I
Thank
hope
you.
it helps people in this county as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring on Dr. Lynn Stevens. Yes, it happens to doctors. Yes, it happens to lawyers, believe it or not. Yes, no one is exempt from this happening to them. So just give it a moment for her to load.
Can you hear me?
Hello. Thank you for, yes, we can. Thank you for joining, and go ahead and tell us your 7-minute, what's happened to you.
So my name is Lynn Stevens, and my court case is currently in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My divorce finalized 6 years ago in Oregon, and I was a sole caretaker of my daughter, my firstborn, and we didn't have a schedule, like a visitation schedule, because I always have her, and I gave him 50-50 legal custody, but when we came to Oklahoma, he withheld my child by force, because he's like 3 times my size, 3 times my weight, and instead of being punished, the court rewarded him with every other week custody, and temporary, every other week temporary schedule, and it's ongoing for years. And every time there's abuse, child neglect, medical, educational, physical, and sexual grooming, reported to the GAL, the the child custody evaluator. Nothing get done. Pretty much, he does whatever he wants, and there's no punishment. There's no changes in custody for years, and all they do is charge us money, and they told me they would charge half and half. And recently I found out that the GAO charged everything to my account when I got the bills from Oklahoma Bar. And then pretty much random strangers would call against my ex-husband, call CPS 5 times or more on him, until 2020 summer. They finally, opened investigation, and it confirmed that he was abusive, but then the supervisor truncated the report and unsubstantiated abuse against him. The caseworker agreed to testify, but the GAO threatened that if we go to trial, the GAO will lie and say that that my daughter is a liar, and she was only 6 at that time, and 6-year-old doesn't lie because there's no incentive to lie, and usually that's with teenagers. Anyways, so pretty much I gave up and walked away because it's like there's no justice, but they wouldn't leave me alone. 2 years later, the GAL and my ex-husband keep on coming into his office, coaching Grace, and then they falsely accuse me of abuse, even though the abuser is really him. The whole time, with evidence, with recordings, with pictures, with diary of the child written with her psychologist. But they ignore all that, and pretty much falsely accuse me of abuse based on hearsay, like, oh, it's movie Tekken with rape scene, squishy hands, and all these things. And I'm like, well, my friend told me movie Tekken is PG-13. So then they changed the story to, oh, mom forced child to watch adult porn. And I'm like, here's my bills. There's no cable for me to watch adult porn. Then they changed the story to child porn and took away my daughter. And I haven't been allowed to see my daughter since December 3rd with no due process. There's no forensic interview done. There was no FBI investigation to prove that I have child porn. There was no court hearing that I can get to have my, testifying cross-examination, and pretty much they closed the case and say substantiated abuse against me. Even though we have evidence from a private investigator that used digital forensic scanning of my phone, of my iPad, and there's no porn in there, there's no child porn, there's no movie taken. But they also haven't convicted me of any crime yet. I haven't been allowed to talk to my daughter, haven't video, a chat, nothing. She's been isolated from me completely since December 3rd. And I know rapists and murderers get to see their child supervised for free at least once a month, but I got zero. And I'm an upright citizen. I'm a U.S. veteran that served the Navy for 5 years with honorable discharge. I've been serving the VA, the Veteran Affairs, as their medical doctor for 2 years. And I've been serving the Indian Health. I serve this country, and yet I have no due process. The message today is like, people can say, well, it's someone else's kids until it's yours. And that, the crime, if not quickly, the punishment not quickly carried out, then the hearts of the people will prone to do wrong. And what I've learned through the family court is, what the message sending to me is, I should have been abusive. I should have been a mean, angry mom, beat my child, abuse my child, then I will have sole custody. Even though I was the one that paid for everything, I was the one that took care of her, that raised her up, teach her to do right, that have never been abusive. And we have multiple witnesses available and was ready to witness, including child psychologist. But my GL would threaten my attorney out in the hallway. And then the next witness, supposed to be the child psychologist, would not be called in. She refused to call him in. I said I wanted him in the court, and they still haven't let him in. And so there's a lot of injustice. And, I suggest that I hope the Congress, all these people, the congressmen, congresswomen, that you would change the law so that there'll be no stripping of parental rights unless there's a jury trial confirming the guilty, confirming with proof, because there's no proof. They couldn't even provide proof of my abusive, forcing child watching porn and mental abuse. And there should be no waiving of rights. I'm sorry, but somebody checked a box to say I waived my rights, but that wasn't true, because I never did. And there's no signature anywhere to say I waived my rights. And then they never have evidentiary hearing ever. And it's been past 6 months, and I'm still not allowed to see my child. And then they declare me mentally ill, even though my current husband has been living with me 24/7. And my current husband is also a doctor who testified that there's no concern for my mental health. And my neighbor testified that there's no concern for my mental health or my abuse, being abused ever. And that they all say that I'm a great mom on the court hearing, and it doesn't matter. In the end, they still say, oh, you need to have a psych eval that costs $3,000 to $5,000 that you don't have, and because of all these legal fees, and that you will never get to see your child until my ex, bring her in to the therapeutic visit, which he hasn't done. And so I can go on and on, but
no,
my
thank
time
you.
is
Thank
running
you
out.
for very good, thank you very much for your presentation, Dr. Lynn. I just had I had a question for you. Have you had any support or any help at all during this time where anybody validates you or believes you? Or
Yes, the caseworker from 2020, 2020, 2 years ago, she did come in to testify that her report was truncated, but the GAL and the public defender and the appointant keep on objected to her introducing the original report and objecting everything about that I tried to present, like the child's diary, personal diary that she's written about everything, about abuses of dad, about all the neutral events, of all her life events. It was both neutral, it's like an actual diary. It wasn't just all about dad. And they refused to let her introduce that into court. And
wow, it's terrible. It's unbelievable.
Yes.
It's unreal.
Mhm.
And also,
But I got
I
help
want
from you, Francesca. I got help from you and Marike, the Family Anti-Corruption
yeah.
group. So I
Hmm.
got your help
Yeah,
and
it's a
that
good thing
lady.
for groups. It's a good thing for
Mhm.
groups. We're the ones that are going to take it down. Again, Dr. Lynn, thank you so much. I'm going to bring my next guest on. So if you could just exit from this
Thank you.
from the system.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I
Mhm.
really appreciate you today. Thank you.
Thank
Now, my next guest is Bobby Joe. Now, Bobby Joe, this is a very interesting case. She is a lovely woman. I actually got to meet her in DC, and we've been trying to help her, and they're blocking us on every angle. However, Bobby Joe is she's a victim of the childhood foster care system, now leading into an adult. So, Bobby Joe, 7 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Bobby Joe. My story is it is different than, it has a little bit of everyone's. It's just different because it did start when I was a child. I was sold as a child in Wyoming. My birth mother did drugs and sold me to a rich person who would adopt children and kill them and torture them. I luckily survived. That's how I ended up in Utah. I was life-flighted here. And unfortunately, the same thing happened again here. The family that ended up with me, even though my biological grandparents had been awarded custody to me. So just to make things short, it's taken me over 15 years to just unseal what happened to me. And now that I have going on with I have 4 kids, one of them being illegally adopted. Last November, they said they just found out who I was because according to the laws, there's tons of conflicts of interest, illegal stuff. I have now had every single public defender, including one as of this morning. I've been told because if I open my mouth, I have evidence. It's not just, I can't tell the story. All I can do is just show the evidence. And everyone wants to know where I got it. And it wasn't easy. It took years, but I can't even have a public defender because everybody is pulling out because nobody wants to get sued or make the wrong move. And I didn't know what my rights were now. And my children are suffering all for the reason of, like, I shut up for a long time. I shut up. I didn't tell anyone. And they still took them just because I might tell someone. So it's really corrupt down here and a lot of conflicts of interest. And I don't know how to explain it. It's just none of it's legal and judges don't get to hear that. One judge, we went 6 months and he's dealt with me before. He's like, what is going on? No one talks about the domestic violence. No one talks about anything. They also just randomly decided that all of a sudden they found out. And so it changes everything. And so I don't know. I'm not really good at it. It's becoming more difficult, and I've been threatened by everyone that if I keep opening my mouth, I'm not going to see my kids anymore. Even though I'm the one supporting them, taking care of them, doing everything, making sure their appointments. My daughter was being molested, and I did everything for a month, and by the time they got her checked out, nobody will do anything. They're so scared of getting in trouble, and I said, how many times do you guys have to keep messing up? Their paperwork doesn't match. They keep forgetting. They only take my girls. And they keep, literally yesterday, they keep forgetting I have 4 kids, not just 2, and I don't just have girls. And it's the same prosecutor. Like, it's not the caseworker this time. Like I told her, she's being really nice. The caseworkers don't have a problem with me. It's the people above them. I've had caseworkers quit because they can't watch what they put me through. And I'm tired of watching my kids suffer and thinking that I don't love them and I'm not there.
Sorry, I'm so sorry, honey. And I thank you for telling your story. I know it was very hard, and you came all the way to DC, and I'm just very proud of you for all that you've done. And
Thank you.
do you feel like you're getting any help with Punish for Protecting?
No, nobody's but you, like literally before, you're the reason why everyone started pulling out, and actually it took you. Nobody knew I could do anything about it. It doesn't matter if I had the proof. What can I do about it? It doesn't matter if I can sue them, and I have every right to, and I can prove all these horrible illegal things are happening. Who's gonna do it for me? Until I hired you and until I met you, there was no one that I could find besides the people that made that thing I handed you in DC that has all the evidence, but even they could only go so far. So no, you're the only one that, and if it wasn't for you, like I would be in jail right now. They're trying to shut me up, and especially going to DC and doing this, like I have consequences. And I know that, but if I'm just quiet, then I don't know what they're going to keep doing to my kids. I know what they did to me, and I can't keep it. And they're doing it to other children and other parents. It's just, it never stops. But thank you.
I think I'm having a network issue again. It's a very sick and evil system. I don't know. I guess she got kicked. Now.
My phone is being a service. Okay. I can't hear very well. All right, yeah, but that's all I have to say. I mean, pretty much everything I can say. I just know that I have evidence now, and that's the worst part, is that it's no longer made it so that I had to find out things I didn't want to know. Like, it's disgusting. When I lost my daughter in court, they said it was the sickest case they'd ever seen, and that was 8 years ago. It gets worse. So, I am not having good service, so I think I'm going to hit off on camera.
Hi, I can see that they got kicked off, and I'm hoping that everybody can hear me and I'm not frozen or anything. My name is Gina DeLeo. I am from an upper class family from Boca Raton, Florida, and I moved to Seminole County, Florida, and became a critical care registered nurse. I've been a critical care registered nurse for the past 13 years. I married a man that I met in college when I was 20 years old, and found out later that he had a history of drugs and a. Hi, Fran. Can you hear me? Francesca?
You could go ahead. Keep going.
Okay, I started
I don't know
when
what's going on.
Okay, so
You're fine. I'm glad you did. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you
So,
so much.
of course. So later I found out that my husband did get off and expunge felony charges prior to me meeting him, and his parents, who had money, were helping him get in and out of trouble his whole life. We had 2 beautiful children together. They're girls. Their names are Gianna here and Janessa. They are currently 10 and 8 years old. My husband, through me, we built a beautiful life and 2 children together, and I walked on eggshells for many years. He threw me on my back in 2019, July 2019. I called the police. When the police arrived, he told them that I was the aggressor, and they believed him. He was not arrested. They made him leave the house. I went to the hospital while a neighbor watched our children. And then when I realized that my back was not broken, I did have 3 compression fractures to 3 vertebrae. And so I left. I got a protective order and injunction at the courthouse and went to Boca to stay with my parents for the weekend. I came back up to domestic violence court, and through the whole process, he was harassing me constantly, telling me that they're going to take our children away from me if I don't let him see them. I let him FaceTime them. And the legal abuse started. So I was forced into a settlement agreement with him at domestic violence court, where he could see his children almost 50% of the time. And we were nesting. So the marital home we were coming in and out of, while the children stayed in the home. During that time, he violated the injunction more times than I can count. He came in on me in the house when I was naked. He unlocked doors. He harassed me. He would show up when it wasn't his time. We did flee the marital home. I did. And then the legal abuse started. The police believed him every step of the way, even though I had proof of things that were happening. I had cameras in the garage showing that he was coming into the house during my time sharing. I had presented those, and that was all thrown out. He wrote a fraudulent email. He broke into my email account. He wrote a fraudulent email stating that it was from me, and he submitted it to the court. He went to trial to dissolve his injunction. They did not ask him where this email came from. He did not have to show verification of an IP address or anything where this email was written from. They allowed him to get off of the injunction based on that email. It stated in the email horrible things, that I will take his children away from him, and that I am, crazy, and that I'm making it all up. He's a great dad at the end. And so he wrote this email the whole way through our custody battle. I've been in a 3-year custody battle with this man. I spent over $100,000 protecting my 2 beautiful children. They have regressed tremendously while they were in his care, and we were in this temporary court agreement that he had 50% of the time. Their school grades dropped. They're wetting the bed. They are in fear. They are having anxiety, emotional outbursts when they come back before they go to dad's house. They are not allowed to talk to me while they're at dad's house from day one since he got them. I went to court. I had 7 binders, 2 to 4 inches thick of all of these documents, all of this proof. I worked really hard for 3 years, spent my life savings to protect my children in the family court system. And he had nothing. He had no proof whatsoever. My daughter had 8 UTIs in a year. She got diagnosed with chronic constipation. She was so scared. Daddy would yell at her if she had accidents that she was trying to hold all of her bowels and her urine in. She still has urinary problems. I got her diagnosed at a urologist with the chronic constipation, where she was prescribed to get Miralax around the clock. Dad does not administer the Miralax. So when she comes back to me, she's continuously constipated. We've had multiple x-rays showing this. I brought this all to court. And I got looked down upon. It was definitely biased in the family court system against women. She tried to hold me in contempt. I've been tried to be held in contempt 3 times on false allegations. And they babied dad. They said, oh, it's okay. When he started lying, it's okay. Shh, it's okay. I understand. And they let him stop talking, the family judge, or the family court system judge. So I just want to make sure I kind of cover everything. I just got out of court two months ago. Very traumatic experience in me and my children's lives. My ex-husband is awarded majority of time with the girls. And it starts this coming up school year, and I have to pay him child support. He makes triple what I make. We started a beautiful family business. He got everything. He got everything from the home. He got all the money. He got all the belongings, and he got the children based on lies and false allegations and bias in the family court system. My children are absolutely devastated, and I'm still in the process of fighting for their rights. He is abusive. I had to call CPS because he told them if they break his TV, they were flying a little toy from Christmas and it hit his TV. If they break his TV, he'll break their neck. I called CPS. CPS did absolutely nothing about it. He told them that I'm crazy and I'm making up all these allegations. They knew of his history of drug abuse and of his domestic violence history. I am currently going pro se. I fired my attorney yesterday. I'm completely in this processing, still to this day. And I'm fighting child support allegations and trying to show that he goes on vacations every month, has never paid for medical. He has medical neglect on the children continuously. He denies that our child ever had a UTI. She's had 8. She's had it all diagnosed, had all the records. He won't see the urologist. He won't give her the medication. He won't even acknowledge it. He tells her, give her Tylenol and water. She's fine. He's a respiratory therapist. He's a medical professional. He's also critical care. It's absolutely abuse. It's absolutely ridiculous. I have since retired from being a registered nurse. I still have my license, but I'm not working as that anymore. I am now an advocate for women and children going forward. I have notebooks upon notebooks where I talk to women daily for the past 2 months with all of the same situations in the family court system. I can read you. They've been in and out of court, 9 years, 11 years custody battle, children taken away from them. I can read you. Going through all of the trauma myself with my children very currently, and being able to hear these stories isn't easy. It's not easy, but something has to be done. It is corrupt. I have spent so much money to get my children taken away from me. It is absolutely ridiculous. I come from a beautiful family. The only crime I ever had was marrying a man who is abusive. That's the only thing I have ever done. I don't do drugs. I go to church 3 times a week. I thank God for this opportunity today. I pray for all of these women and children. Yes, majority are women. I have had some men who have married narcissistic wives, and we help them too. So I am not biased against men whatsoever, but the abuse, majority, about 80, 90% come from men. The family court system believes that 80% of women that walk in claiming that they are from abusive homes are lying. The true statistic is 1.8% of women are lying. They think that there are false allegations coming from women. 23% of men give false allegations. 0.8% of women give false allegations. This is absolutely incorrect. It's injustice. It's disgusting. It's a business. They're robbing us. I'm bankrupt, and I will not stop. And I'm so thankful for being heard today. Please help our women and children. They are holding us down. They are hurting us. My children have no voice. They are scared. If I see them in the street with their dad, they will not come up to me and give me a hug in fear of his reaction. He attacks constantly and has slandered my name all over town. He called my job and said I use IV drugs and I steal drugs from patients. It's out of control. He bashed me on social media for 2 years. He took the social media account, 400 of our family and friends. He continues to do it. I show proof to the court. They don't care. He's vindictive. He's spiteful, and it gets turned around on me. It's called DARVO, deny, attacked, victim, and offender. And we have so much money in America. It is a $70,000 billion a year industry, the family court system, and they're not educated on this. And I've been doing this 3 years, and I'm more educated than these judges and family court officials. It is absolutely disgusting and absurd that women and children and other, American citizens have to go through losing their children to these traumatic events because of money.
I want to thank you.
I'm sorry, Francesca, I can't hear you. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to let myself go, and I appreciate being heard today. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Patricia Koski, and I'm a grandmother. My granddaughter was taken on March 10th, 2017, from the paternal father. It has come to our attention.
It cut me right off. Hi, Patricia. If you would like to go ahead, and please be
mindful. Yeah, I had started.
Please be mindful of the 7 minutes, though. It's very important. Thank you.
Okay. My granddaughter was taken on March 10th, 2017, from the father's residence, which we later found out he was renting the house from the now foster adoptee parents. My daughter fought to get her back with a lawyer who is Lisa Vincent is her name. And I moved to Connecticut to help with the situation. I rented my own apartment and I am self-sustaining and retired now. The lawyer, Lisa Vincent, kept repeatedly telling me not to file a motion to intervene, that she would get my granddaughter back for my daughter. Then we went to trial, and they started a termination of rights trial. And this was after 11 months of my granddaughter being with the foster parents. I went to DCF. I passed the psychological, the drug test, and the home inspection test. And they still would not give me my granddaughter. They ignored me. They shut me out. And they kept my granddaughter with the foster parents. I was never, ever considered for guardianship, and I was never told why I was continually denied. The paternal grandparents got the opportunity to have my granddaughter for 6 weeks. They are in the 70s, and they were in Florida. So I live in Connecticut. This is where the incident happened, and I moved to Connecticut to get my granddaughter. They sent her back saying that they were not capable of taking care of a 4-year-old at that time. My granddaughter is now 8 years old. So we went to a termination of rights trial. While in the trial, Lisa Vincent started the trial and she coerced my daughter into signing a paper that said she would terminate her rights only if I got custody of my granddaughter. But apparently that's not what the paper really said, but my daughter believed her. During the trial, this came up, and then out of nowhere, Lisa Vincent was arrested for intimidation of a client in another trial that she was participating in. So then our trial, was declared a mistrial, but that paper still stood. We were assigned another legal aid attorney who is wonderful. His name is Albert Onito, and he looked over the case files and he could not understand. There was 3 places in this case file where I should have gotten custody of my granddaughter, that Lisa Vincent never made the effort to get her to me. And in fact, she stymied and stifled every direction for me to go to get my granddaughter by misguiding me. Even though she said she wasn't technically my attorney, she kept giving advice. And I have the emails to prove it. I kept meticulously written documentation through this whole thing. So now we have a declared mistrial and we start again. And Albert, he did his best. He really presented the case. And DCF did nothing. They were very lackadaisical in their participation in this trial. It was almost like they knew the outcome. And they kept delaying everything. The trial was delayed months in between when it started. And this was before the pandemic. And what they were doing is they were making the foster parents, giving them the length of time to use against us. The longer they had my granddaughter, the better it looked for them. Now, the people who had my granddaughter, they're what they call professional foster parents. They do it their whole lives. They are the same age as I am. Yet they wanted my granddaughter, and DCF wanted her to have my granddaughter because they were getting paid a lot of money through the state. And this is DCF in Torrington, Connecticut. So our lawyer thought we actually won the trial. He presented such a good case, and I testified for 5.5 hours. And we were shocked at the result, which we didn't get to the very end of the time period allotted to make the decision, which was done on purpose again to keep my granddaughter in these people's custody for as long as possible. And just as we got the decision was 3 days before the pandemic hit. And my ability to see my granddaughter was terminated flat. I got to see her for Valentine's Day 2020, and then that was it. And the same thing for my daughter. And then we did not see her for 2.5 years. Until this past December 30th, we got an 1.5-hour visit. The thing that I don't understand is what was wrong with me? I raised my 2 kids. I have a stable home. I'm retired now. I could be with her all the time. The only problem is I'm retired disabled and I have problems with my asthma, but they're not big problems. I have them under control. And that's the only thing that I could think of was held against me, but nobody would tell me why. They just ignored me. It was like they blocked me out, like I didn't exist. They let the other grandparents in and they let the foster parents in, but they kept me on the sideline. No matter what I did to fight with them, I have no rights in Connecticut as a grandparent, but I should have had the right to have my granddaughter over strangers. And then we found later on that the father was renting a place that was owned by the people who now have my granddaughter, which she chose at the time of her adoption. She was 6, which was 2.5 years after the court, or 3 years. She chose to keep her own name and not take theirs. She knows she belongs with us. And every time we had seen her before, she kept asking us, when is she coming home? When is she coming home? And they told her, they asked her, where does she want to live? But she was never given the option to even mention me. She would say, I want to live with mommy. And they would say, you can't live with mommy. but they never said you can live with Nona. So what is a 4 or 5-year-old going to think? She's going to think, if I don't say I want to live with the foster parents, I'm going to be on the street. Their mind doesn't go, I can find somebody else. So I believe now I send my granddaughter a gift every week because I want her to remember me, but they're still punishing us for fighting for custody of our blood. And they won't let my daughter nor I see her on any regular basis. And my granddaughter clearly looks like she's okay. I don't believe she's being physically abused, but she knows something's wrong. And I will never stop fighting for her. And I ask that you help me get justice for my family. This has tortured my family. My daughter has cried herself to sleep for the last 5 years, and I have too. It's torn my family up not to be able to be together. I appreciate anything or any help I can get, and Francesca has been a big light in my life, and I thank you. Help me get justice. And the Torrington Courthouse, if you look it up, Torrington DCF, it is one of the most corrupt systems in this state, or in the tri-state area, I should say. We did not know this. We've never dealt with DCF before. We've never dealt with a situation like this. This doesn't run in our family. It's totally beyond comprehension. I never thought the legal system was so corrupt. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess we lost we lost our next guest. All right, so I'm going to bring in everybody in order. I just want to let everybody that's watching right now know that no, we're not taking any more than unless you're already in the queue. So whoever's in the queue is all that can come in at this point, okay? And I do apologize for that. So my next guest is Trisha.
Hey, Francesca.
Hi, Trisha. Go right ahead and do your 7 minutes because we're going to try to get through everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, my ordeal started in 2013. My ex-husband had previously almost killed me. He beat me so bad. And I finally decided to defend myself. And instead of CPS removing him, they took the children from me. I had taken about a year to get my family back. But in the end, a judge awarded me full custody of all 3 of my babies, despite that they previously had me supervised by my abuser. So every time I would go to see my kids, he would hurt me again and claim I hurt him, but I got through it. Within 6 months of me getting full custody of my kids, he began filing false accusation after false accusation against myself, against significant others, any form of legal abuse that he could find, to try to get a foothold on custody, to cost me money, to bankrupt, whatever he could do. I've had 6 of false allegations filed against me now between CPS and the courts. They are dismissed every single time. I lost 2 relationships because he nearly destroyed their careers and they couldn't take it anymore. I am currently married now, though. However, most recently, he has filed false allegations against my current husband for abuse, which is his current stance. One of the allegations, although proven false, was grounds for my teenage daughter at the time to go stay with him, and they gave me my sons about 6 months after I won custody of all 3. Within 2 months of getting custody of my daughter, he not only abused her in about 6 different ways, he abandoned her. He moved 5 hours away. He did not tell me that he left her. She was staying on friends' couches. She was sexually active. She started doing drugs. She was about 16 years old. She went from an honors student to now turning 21 next week and can't hold a job, never went to college. He abused her. He stole her money. He tried to take out loans in her name. His new wife crashed her car. They wouldn't replace it. She was sick. He wouldn't get her help. Another mother decided to get her help. And then called me to finally tell me 6 months later, do you know where your child is? And I said, no. I called CPS. I called the school. I called the courts, and they said she's too old. We don't care. I did get my relationship with my daughter back. However, she has now stopped talking to me again because he has taken me back to court again and convinced her that if she talks to me, that she's working against him. A year ago, I moved to a wonderful neighborhood in Western Branch here in Chesapeake, Virginia, from Norfolk. I was remarried. I had the best school district for my sons that you could get. And as soon as I closed on my new home, he filed yet more false allegations. The GAL wrote a completely inaccurate report against me for last October's trial. I received it at 5 p.m. the day before trial, and it was so egregious that I did not have time to defend it. And therefore, they agreed that they would let my ex-husband do a trial run with my sons for the past 8 months. Since then, he has now abused my sons. My oldest son has gone from an honor student to failing. He lost all scholarships. I have shown both mental abuse. Physically, they are in the 3 percentile because they are starving there. They sent my sons to live with him and his new wife, who is a former drug-addicted prostitute who's still on drugs, mind you, was recently beaten severely by drug dealers. And I have proof of this that the GAO refuses to hear. She has 5 children by 5 different men. She has custody of none of them due to drug abuse and immediately taking the children. CPS immediately took every last one of her children. The one child that managed to stay with her, she does not have custody of. And the GAL is aware of all of this, yet still let my children go live there. I went back to court 2 weeks ago, only to have it continue till September 14th. And despite all of this evidence against them, the GAL still says that she does not know that she's willing to give my children back to me. I have proof that my ex-husband has now tampered with my younger son's medication for his ADD, causing severe withdrawal symptoms that were so severe the current school system called me out of concern for his welfare. They reported to CPS that I did it. I have proof that he did it, and she still said that's not enough. So I am now $130,000 into attorney's fees with multiple court cases. I think this is my 7th trial since 2013. With no end in sight, I asked that he stop being allowed to file charges against me, and was told that it's his right to do so. I was also told it's his right to obtain my medical records because they have now deemed me crazy because I went and got mental health treatment for the trauma. So that is where I'm at. Thank you for letting me tell the story, Francesca, and thank you for helping us. I can't hear you, honey. I can't hear you. Bye. Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Amato. I'll go ahead and get started. I wanted to thank Congress and Ms. Amato for hearing all of us, taking the time. My name is Vicki Bailey. I'm in San Diego, California, in San Diego County. My story began January of 2019. I'm 56 years old. I have adult sons. I have one son with my husband of 22 years now, but January of 2019, my 15-year-old son and I fled domestic violence. I was told about this hearing just an hour ago, so I'm going off notes. My husband is diagnosed by the VA as 100% disabled with mixed personality disorder, major depression disorder with psychotic features and paranoia. He's also diagnosed from a private clinical psychologist, Dr. Craig Wiese in San Diego, as a, quote, dangerous covert narcissistic personality disorder. When we found that out, my husband took us and ran. He moved us 29 times in 19 years. He runs off multiple aliases. My husband is extremely intelligent. He has 2 master's degrees. He does not permit anyone to have an education. We were isolated. My son, Charlie, was found globally delayed at 18 months. He was born in 2005. His other brothers now are in their 20s and 30s. One of his older brothers is also on the spectrum. Charlie in 2011 was found with 2 brain tumors. He had brain surgery to remove one of them. The other one is being monitored. And he developed autoimmune encephalitis. His growth plate slipped out of his hips. So multiple medical issues, EEG, seizures, and we were managing them very well under the circumstances. In 2019, my son finally said, "I'm ready to go, Mom." And we fled. We came back home to San Diego. We have endured absolute hell. The first thing that happened was my husband walks into the first hearing in family court. He voluntarily relinquishes all of his rights. And he asked the court to terminate visitation with his son because he did not want supervised visitation. The court you could hear the entire court in awe, just the shocking of the behaviors. And the court on its own ordered a psych eval on the father and ordered supervised visitation. However, that's when everything turned. My son was very stable, had no 5150s, no suicidal prior to this. We were just dealing with a lot of medical issues, which are all verified with tests. And my husband disappears, and then he comes back and he just asks for visitation as if it's a brand new case and there's no evidence. And Judge Blaine Bowman, my husband didn't do the psych eval. He violated the restraining orders. And Judge Blaine Bowman, that I went to school with, lifted the supervised visitation and ordered me, with still the restraining order, the judge, quote, "I can lift the order for you because I'm ordering you to go to your husband's home and check it out for visitation just to satisfy you." And I refused to do it. We have endured, I was doing this last minute. My husband continued his harassment, stalking. We've got the evidence, we've got the texts, the emails, and my son continued to deteriorate. Then the 5150 started, the suicidal thoughts started with no actions. My child's doctors stated in record that was not allowed in court. They've documented how Charlie does better when he doesn't have open, unmonitored contact with his father. This is really hard to do. You have it all practiced. CPS came in January of 2021, and without notice, and they removed my son, and nobody has seen him since. No one. My son filed a report through his therapist without me even knowing in detail of the sexual abuse that he's endured by his father for decades. There's a lot of back evidence that puts the puzzle pieces together. The porn they watched previously that the child says he's got all dad's favorite passwords and websites on the porn, and he's telling all this. And CPS admits in their report that they called the police and canceled the investigation. CPS threatens me in writing, if I speak or submit any evidence, they will most likely amend their 300C petition to file criminal charges against me. We were never permitted to speak. No evidence was submitted. Nobody was allowed to question witnesses. My CPS appointed attorney never challenged an allegation, never defended me, agreed to everything. The CPS appointed a trauma therapist to me, and she cleared me of the allegations. And they called her in a conference call while I was in therapy session with her. And they instructed her to, quote, amend her diagnosis to match their findings, and she refused. She has since disappeared. 11 months after my son was taken from us, then nobody's had any contact with. They took him because they said they did not allow his medical records into evidence, and they claimed Munchausen's, that I've made all this up. I've made up his brain surgery. I've made up his brain tumors. I've made up his EEG and his seizure records. Mother's made it all up. And the father's going with this. And none of the evidence from family court is being submitted into CPS court because the father admits in family court previously that the child has these medical issues. And in CPS court, the father says, no, they don't exist. I lost my train of thought. My apologies. This is very difficult. 11 months later, my son flees his father's custody. We get a phone call from a sheriff just because he doesn't know the situation, and the sheriff tells me my son has fled and hid out in the back of a Petco storeroom in San Diego, and he has sent out texts at the same time in real time as he's fleeing his father, and he's disclosing sexual abuse, alcohol abuse. It's all the same. It fits the pattern. He's screaming for help. And he discloses, quote, Dad dated Jennifer Diaz, a DEA, and that's how he got me removed from Moms illegally. He talks about being held in a compound and isolated. This is, again, we were not permitted to have friends. We were held on 80 acres in isolation. My son was never permitted to have an education or go to school, so he has no social skills. He has no friends. He does not know the real rules or his rights, and his father is holding him. CPS and the father have terminated all my son's medical care. CPS stated in their findings that this child is not autistic, and they withheld my 7 psychological neuropsych evals and testings that all UCSD, Rady's Children's, they've all confirmed that Charlie is on the autism spectrum since he was about 7 years old. They cut off all his medications. They cut off his seizure meds, and Charlie has disappeared. At the same time, my husband has been permitted to terminate the special support garnishment. He's been allowed to hold on to all the marital assets of 20 years. He's even openly stated he's holding them. He states them as he is preserving the marital assets until trial. He has an attorney. I do not. Charlie and I are under protective custody under the State of California Safe at Home program under the DA's office. The violation of the restraining orders are confirmed in letters from the city attorney's office and the police investigation reports, all of which is ignored by family court, not permitted in for evidence. In family court, I am not a victim, I am an abuser. The CPS appointed trauma therapist not only clears me, but she diagnoses me with long-term domestic violence victim, PTSD. And when she disappears, I find a counselor at the Community Resource Center down here in San Diego. And he's confirming the same thing, and he's adding complex trauma to this. My husband can stand in court, make a lie, not have any evidence, and I'm standing there with 200 exhibits of theft, fraud, ID fraud, forging my signature, stealing bank account money, stalking me, using my name to interfere and terminate my separate medical insurance. And none of this matters. It's not acknowledged. It's not. So I am still a prisoner. My son is still listed under protection by the state of California against his father for sexual abuse and for domestic violence. And he's forced to stay with his father. Last November, when my son fled his father's care, he described 3 of his physical attempts at suicide, and nothing was done. There was no investigation. CPS forcibly put him back with his father. And again, nobody has visitation. Nobody has contact. He was removed from all of his adult brothers. They've had no contact. He was removed from San Diego Regional Center. He's a client of San Diego Regional Center for Autism Services, who San Diego Regional Center does their own evaluation, and they've already determined that he's an autistic child. He's been medically neglected from all of these. At the same time, somebody's being nice enough periodically, they're mailing me his EOBs on Charlie. And Charlie's been in and out of the hospital. He's been in and out of the ER. He's had a cardiovascular surgery. I don't know what these things are in detail because I'm not privy to them. CPS calls me periodically every couple of months and threatens me. You're not contacting your son, are you? We're making sure you're not. They have stated openly that the mother will have no visitation or contact until she, quote, admits to what she has done. The CPS appointed trauma therapist asked CPS, what is it the mother has done so we can deal with this in therapy? And nobody can say anything. They've removed my son for emotional abuse of a child. A week after they removed him, they put me on the California Abuser Index with no hearing. They denied my hearing. I'm all alone. He's got all the money. He's violating the 230s. He's violating everything. This is all being allowed. I have a now 17-year-old son screaming to be rescued. And CPS is covering it up and nobody's listening. I am begging. At this point, I don't need to see him. Go rescue this child. His texts are public record now. They went across the internet. I am floored at the control that an abuser has. I'm still a prisoner. My husband controls whenever I get spousal support, if I make rent, if I live in my car. He controls everything. I beg all of you for help, and I will gladly give up my life if somebody can help me rescue just my son. Thank you so much for hearing this. I don't know what else to say.
Thank you for telling your story today. I really appreciate you. Thank you for telling your story today. I appreciate you. Do you hear me or not?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now my next guest is Heather. You can go. You can start.
My name is Heather Middendorf. My case started in 2009 in Tioga County, New York, when I filed for divorce from my ex-husband. And it went between divorce, Supreme Court and family court. So, anyways, I filed in 2009, and I went back to school while we were fighting all of this, back and forth in family court mostly. And I went back to dental hygiene school. So I had to deal with all of the chaos, the unneeded chaos, while I was doing that. And I never tried to take custody away from him. We had joint custody for about 4 years, and I had primary residence of our kids. He was never ordered to pay child support ever by any judge. I don't even know where to begin. So basically, he would do things like on purpose to create chaos, to try to take custody from me. Like he would pick them up from school when he wasn't supposed to, on days, like we had very specific days that he was, supposed to have them and I was supposed to have them. So it started with that kind of a chaos. And later on, like just because I know we have 7 minutes here, when he got caught in some of the antics that he did, I thought it would be very important to read one of these. So currently, our oldest son is 19 and our youngest is 15. We have 2 boys. And so this particular incident happened in 2011. And this is documented by their court-appointed attorney at the time. So this is just showing what they knew then, and in the end of the divorce in 2011, or this was 2011. They gave him sole custody of our children in 2013. So I just wanted to read, because this is very, very detailed, and they gave sole custody to him when they knew this, that he did this. So this is from the attorney for the children in 2011 when he kidnapped them from me while I was sleeping. And this is an affidavit in support of order to show cause. Upon information and belief, the children were removed from the mother's home during the night on August 18th, 2011 by their father. Dylan stole his mother's cell phone and contacted his father to come get the boys. All this occurred sometime between approximately 9 and 11 p.m. when Trooper Derek arrived and awoke the mother. Upon information and belief, Dylan and his father had discussed the plan in advance. This is a little boy, you know, little boy, 8 at the time. The boys waited until their mother was asleep and snuck from the residence, leaving by the front door and getting into the father's car. The father drove them back to his home, where he then called the New York State Police. The state police arrived at the mother's home, banged on the entry to the open door, awakening the mother, who then discovered that her children and later that her cell phone were missing. The children have admitted that they had to sneak out and not awaken their mother according to the plan. It was scary, as they had to sneak and be quiet and go out in the dark alone. The father advised Trooper Derek that he had to return to his home to call the state police for help, as he did not take his cell phone with him. This is despite the fact that he knew his son called him 3 times that night on the cell phone. The mother's cell records, as verified by the trooper, indicate that Dylan called the father's cell 3 times, the first resulting in a call over 20 minutes in length, followed by 2 later calls between them. Allegedly, Dylan reported to the father that he was scared and unsupervised. Even if the child's statements are presumed true, the father never told him to look for his mother in her bedroom or any other room. The father made certain to tell the trooper that he never entered the home. He did not in any way try to locate the mother or check on her welfare in light of the unsupervised claims made allegedly by Dylan, and drove away with the boys, leaving her front door wide open in the dark of night. It goes on and on and on, but this got him supervised visitation. Okay, so fast forward, and they gave him sole custody. There's a lot more evidence of what he did, but this is just one that he got caught doing, and they actually acknowledged. So they gave him sole custody. He then wiped me out of their life. He didn't bring them for visitation. Very minimally did he bring them. If he didn't bring them one weekend, I didn't see my boys. They didn't see their mother for a whole month. And so this went on and on and on. Fast forward to then 2019, I come back because I'm getting reports of abuse. While I am filing, with the court to deal with those reports of abuse, I am shown a video that was recorded by my youngest son on his school iPad of his older brother being abused by his father, and that was in March of 2019. I took them immediately down to the New York State Police, same New York State Police who dealt with this issue, handed them the evidence, the video evidence. They were going to arrest him at first, and then they didn't. CPS was called and involved. They never recommended putting our children back with me. There's no reason for them not to put them back with me. And that's just some of the evidence. I realize I only have 2 minutes left, but and I'm really bad at this, but the bottom line is my boys have lost their mother. I wasn't able to mother them because the court made a bad decision and put them with a child abuser. He was founded to have maltreated them both for that incident with the video. They ignored the other 2 incidents because the New York State Police said they weren't going to consider something that happened a few months prior. So in the end, my kids were left with an abuser. I can't even imagine what their lives were like all those years that I wasn't there. I think this is wrong, and I think that with what they knew going on then, I think that it's evidence that they aren't working for us. They aren't working for the children. They're not helping parents. They're taking tax dollars. They're not doing what is expected. And I know that this is nationwide. I appealed the decision, by the way. I appealed the court's decision. My family helped me spend lots of money to try to reverse Judge M. John Sherman's decision. And they didn't reverse it. In fact, our own appellate division, 3rd Department in New York, this is what is in their decision. Both the mother and the attorney for the children contend that the testimony of the father's psychiatrist, Conscian Mann, MD, who's his personal psychiatrist, concerning the older child's out-of-court statements are inadmissible hearsay. We disagree. A child's out-of-court statements are admissible in a custody dispute if the statements relate to abuse or neglect. So they disagree. They're agreeing that hearsay should be used. And this psychiatrist that testified to give him sole custody, that's my ex-husband's personal psychiatrist since before we divorced. She has never met me. This woman's testimony, she was never appointed by the court. She worked and made up stuff for him and won him custody. So, and nobody will look into this, anyway, I know my time's up and there's a lot more, but I just wanted my voice heard. And since I've been slandered in an appellate division decision and other court decisions.
Well, if it's any consultation to you, everyone has, and it's not a personal thing. They're just sick and they're evil. So it's got nothing to do with you. It doesn't reflect on you at all. We all see through it. We all know what's going on in this evil system. Heather, thank you for telling your story, honey. I'm going to ask you not to leave. I'm just going to put you back in the back room because I don't want anybody else getting in. And then Lacey,
Okay.
You can go ahead and start. You can go ahead and start.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
for
welcome,
listening.
honey. Please be mindful of the 7 minutes. We're very limited right now. You got to unmute yourself, Lacey.
See, I'm unmuted. Hi, Francesca. Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Lacey Lewis. I am from Starkville, Mississippi. That is where my case originated at, where my children were originally taken by CPS based on false allegations that were proven to be false. And November of 2019. A few weeks prior, I had returned home from Kentucky, where my children and I had restarted our lives, where we had a home. They were enrolled in the Head Start program since the first day of school in August. When I returned back to Mississippi to get our things out of storage, my brakes conveniently went out on my car all the way around. False allegations brought CPS to the home of incident in Oktibbeha County, where I made it very clear that I was not homeless, that we had a home in Kentucky. The allegations were of drug abuse and homelessness at that point. I could not get my truck fixed immediately, so I allowed my children to stay with a friend. who lied and manipulated, telling me that CPS had removed the children and placed them with a family member of mine. For 18 days, I had no contact with my children, claiming that CPS would not allow it until I agreed to a 6-month guardianship with my cousin. I spoke with her on the night before the removal for 42 minutes. She allowed me to have a video conference with my kids. After that call ended, she instructed me I had a meeting at 9 a.m. with Webster County, where the children were at the time. I informed her that I knew about the meeting, that I had called it. My vehicle was fixed and they didn't have the kids in custody, so we were going home. 30 minutes prior to that 9 a.m. meeting, the worker from Oktibbeha County called me as she was pulling out of the driveway. I'm not sure what car seats she used in the removal. I do know that there was no written court order. There were no law enforcement present, and I was not contacted until she was pulling out of the driveway. I was brought 31 hours after that to a hearing in Oktibbeha County, where a judicial referee instructed me that my children were in CPS's custody. And as the worker had instructed me, I was too late. 6 months was the minimum. I needed to use that time to find purpose in my life because I had done nothing with my life so far. But this lady did not know me. My children, Eliana and Melania Jane Lewis, were 3 and 4 years old at the time. The only reason I know of what my charges were is because of Eliana telling me the worker was not a good ninja because she wanted her to lie. I was finally able to prove my case in Oktibbeha County, but it took time. I had another hearing that December 17th, where I was told my case would be postponed until the end of January because she was monitoring my social media. And if I learned to shut up, things might go a whole lot better for me. When I was finally given a hair follicle, the end of January, on February the 11th, with a state supervisor, a county supervisor, my worker, and a guardian ad litem, I proved that they manipulated the test results. I did not fail that hair follicle. They had the results in a liquid measurement because they sent my hair to California, had it turned to liquid, and burst everything out of the hair because they were convinced I manipulated that test. The only thing that was proven is that they manipulated the results by making them appear higher. When I brought that to their attention, the worker laughed at me and said I had not completed that case plan. And I said, "What case plan?" Please understand that still today, since November the 24th, when my children were removed of 2019, I have still not been given a case plan. She instructed me that I had not had a psychological evaluation, in which I replied that that was supposed to have been done on me and my children within the first 30 days. I am proactive in mental health. I have had to witness family courts harm to my family, to my nephew, who died in a Georgia State Penitentiary on May the 23rd after being a runaway from Wood County, West Virginia. I was a victim of Wood County, West Virginia's family court as well, with my 13-year-old daughter. I was gagged in that case and threatened a 5-year prison sentence if I ever said anything. They cannot gag me in the state of Mississippi because my rights to freedom of speech are actually held sacred. One of the few rights that I feel I still have. As long as I speak the truth that I can prove and that I can. They couldn't shut me up with a gag order. On February the 18th, that judicial referee in Oktibbeha County instructed me that I could thank Webster County, Mississippi, for her not having to follow the written word of the law that I like to quote so much. Because on February the 12th, the county prosecutor in Webster County pressed the same charges on me that I had just proven. On a speakerphone conversation in a local law office, he instructed the woman who made the phone call for me to not take my case, or before she took my case, that she needed to know that he pressed those charges, not CPS in Webster County. He told unspeakable lies about me that I'm not going to repeat here today because they were slanderous lies. He also claimed that he was going to ensure that no one like me was ever allowed to be a mother. My case in Webster County was postponed until May the 14th of 2020, or 6 weeks after COVID was initiated. I was alienated from my children. They filed for a TPR on me in a secret hearing last summer. I have been alienated from my children since August of 2020. They said I have failed to work with CPS, but that is not the truth. If that was the truth, I would be arrested for violation of a court order. I proved that they manipulated that. Sorry, I understand, Francesca. This court must be abolished. Children like mine should not be separated. When the courts are only more interested in the best interest of their bank accounts than that of our children. Thank you, Francesca. My case is long.
Okay, I'm bringing in my next guest, Virgie, as you're starting to wrap it up, okay?
Okay, I understand, and I thank you so much, too.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask everybody to stay in the queue, though, because I can't bring anybody else in. It keeps knocking me out, and I can't take anybody past this. Virgie, if you want to go ahead and start, honey. Lacey, thank you so much. Thank you so very much. Please stand by, okay, Lacey? Go ahead, Virgie.
Okay.
Please
Hi,
be very
everybody.
mindful of the 7 minutes, like extremely.
Yes, I will. I will. My name is Virgie Simpson, and my case is out of Port Clinton, Ohio, Ottawa County, Ohio. I was married in 2003 to a local, wealthy, inherently wealthy, well-connected young man down there at the time. Young, naive. I didn't know anything about abuse, you know, so on and so forth. In 2006, he was convicted of domestic violence, punching me in the face while I was holding our young toddler daughter. So we had to do a 6 months of anger management, and then, you know, he's off probation, everything's free and clear. Well, we stayed married for about another 4 months. One day we were arguing, and I tried to, like, you know, hide it from the girls, and the girls were at the dinner table, and he, you know, just started screaming and told me to take the girls and get out. So I did. So in 2007, I moved back to Michigan with my oldest daughter, who is not his, and my youngest daughter, who was his at the time. And Michigan is where I'm from. I lived in Michigan until 2012, after the job that I had at the pharmaceutical company, they did a buyout, so we got laid off and I couldn't find work, you know, and then all the nonsense that was going on in 2008, 2009 with the housing market and everything. So I lost my house, lost my car. Well, I had family down south. So I moved down south, and now, mind you, my ex-husband, my youngest's father, was aware of all this. We were, you know, he had been communicating, talking to Haley. So it's like, by that time, he had missed, like, he got every other weekend. So he had missed like 4 visits, which we could make up over the summer, you know, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, what he was actually doing was, Ohio has a 3-month jurisdiction limit. Alabama had a 6-month jurisdiction limit. So he waited until that in-between window and filed for custody and was mailing stuff to old addresses. When I actually got the complete court file, there was one that was proof of service that was literally just my name with no address. So how am I supposed to know anything about any court date? You know, you're mailing it to the North Pole, like, you know. So anyways, I found out about all this stuff because at the time, you know, I was working 2 jobs. My family members had given me a house, and I was working 2 jobs. So I went to work about 4 in the morning, and I would be off of work the time both my daughters got off the school bus, and my oldest daughter is 6 years older than my youngest. And so they had went to school that morning, and I just happened to be at home that day because I had hurt my back the previous day before. And I got a text at about 2:30 that from my ex-husband that said he had our daughter Haley. And I like went into shock. I remember like I couldn't hear anything, and so I drove up to the school, and you know, I'm just panicking. I'm looking, and I you know, then I find her older sister, and you know, I was just a whole mess. Well, so I was in January of 2013. So, you know, after that, that's when I got the court file. So then I came back up from Alabama, and, you know, and I'm working with a domestic violence advocate trying to find one there in Ottawa County, but there wasn't even a local area. So this woman had to come down from Toledo, and I met her the day of trial. When I walked into the courtroom, I was handed 5 more motions for court, like to hold me in contempt and, you know, modify this and that. Like I was just literally blown away. So I met Miss Valerie Fatiga that day. In the meantime, they had my ex-husband, his attorney, and the judge, they changed judges. He had hand-selected a guardian ad litem to interview Haley and, you know, whatever. I had spoke to him once. He mailed me a questionnaire to fill out, like, you know, what's her favorite food, what, you know, shows does she like, and all this stuff. Now, mind you, all this is going on after he took her. So like I am in an extreme state of shock and just kind of coming apart at the seams. You know, it's like your soul has been just ripped out. Like, you know, you're bleeding everywhere, but nobody can see it. So then I start telling him, like, please, like, you don't understand. Like, you cannot give my daughter to a violent man. Please do not do this. Like, you know, and previous to my ex-husband and being given custody, when I had custody, he had sent her home from his visits because he would leave her with the girlfriend or with his mom. My daughter's a redhead. She burns. She came home from a visit at his house, severely sunburned. So bad that, and this was July, so she had long sleeves on. So I was like, well, come on, let's get in the shower. And as soon as I took her shirt off and I seen how bad she was burnt, I took a picture. Well, I'm also a redhead, so I know how to treat a sunburn, but I was just like, this is not okay. So, and before that, she had come home like covered in poison ivy that was not treated. And at this time she was like 6 and 7. So when I actually spoke with the guardian ad litem, you know, I had this picture of Haley where you could see like the top of her butt crack, like the copper tone suntan bottles, you know, and we're like, I took the picture like that so you could see how badly she was burnt. Like you couldn't see the blisters in the camera because this was 2013, so the cameras weren't what they are now. But I wanted like for you to be able to see like this is how bad she was burnt. And he threatened me with child pornography, so that shut that avenue down. I had called CPS about the burn. I had called CPS about the poison ivy. He got Haley's ears pierced without my permission. When I had custody, didn't clean them. The girlfriend, number one, was supposedly a nurse, but Haley told me that she had tried to take her earrings out too soon, so her ears started bleeding. And at this time, Haley was 7, so he's not helping her clean her earrings. And by the time she came home, her earrings were grown into her ear, so we had to go to the ER to have them get the earrings out because the skin had grown over them. Called CPS on that. Nothing happened. Never got a letter, not anything. Boom, he comes down. He takes her out of school in Alabama. So then I go back up once I get the court file, and I'm fighting for custody with this new judge and this supposed domestic violence advocate that I had met that day. And she, I guess I talked to the guardian ad litem or whatever and was like, well, you just need to give up. And I was like, what? Like, no, like I cannot, like, this is insane. Like I have done nothing wrong. Like I am not a criminal. And like, I was looking up Ohio laws before I came up there because I couldn't make sense. Like, how can you take her from me? Like, I am her mother. I am her primary caregiver. He was abusive. Like he didn't even change a diaper. Like he was absolutely not involved in any aspect of the child raising. So I just couldn't make sense. Like, in per Ohio laws, the only reason you should lose custody would be abuse, neglect, or drug use, right? Well, not the case. Apparently, once you get a new attorney and change judges and just collude with everybody. So I go into court, and like, he had produced a paper where when Haley was in school in Alabama, she was in 2nd grade and she's got ADHD, and later on had an IEP. So I had got called at work one day to go pick her up from school because she had gotten sick. So she was home. That was a Monday, and she was home all that week. In elementary school, there was a policy: you have to be fever free for 24 hours with no medicine before you can go back. Okay, so that's right. So we, just hung out at home that week until she, was feeling better. And it was like, all right, well, he produced that as his supposed big piece of evidence that, I don't care about her being in school. And then when it was my turn to testify, I was like, do you see that Monday that says like it's excused? I was like, she was sick. I said, her note is probably stuffed in the bottom of her backpack because that's just, how she was. Well, so then at that time, oh, I'm so sorry. He completely switched custody, and I had sole custody, gave her to my ex-husband. In the 8 years that's passed, my daughter was severely malnourished, diagnosed with fraudulent medical conditions because he would never let her speak. He had threatened to leave her. She's been drugged down the stairs. Like, her organs were shutting down because of how incredibly malnourished she was. 5'9" and 119 pounds, and blood was pooling in her feet. Well, he had a plan because she turned 18 in February. So November, she ran. He was planning on locking her up in an institution, claiming that, she's mentally unstable and, something's wrong with her, because that's how they silence you. That it's all the same tactics. Like, they get you a criminal record, or they get you like a mental, and then you're discredited like forever. Well, she ran, right? And I was in the state of Michigan, I didn't go to Ohio until the day that I was called from the Port Clinton police officer to go pick her up at the shelter in Toledo. Okay, I was in Ohio that day. Since that time, running away is not actually a crime. And mind you, she turned 18 3 months later, and there's been so much. My daughter was charged with a 5th-degree felony of inducing a panic. At her attorney's suggestion, she took a plea deal to it's a misdemeanor 3, something along the lines of obstructing justice, because his words were, if you plead not guilty to this, which she's absolutely not guilty, like, she ran for her life. But if you plead not guilty to this, essentially in front of Judge Haney, it's going to be a 2-month drawn out guilty verdict. So she took the plea deal. It's like, okay, well, you should be, you're fine. Like, you're a good kid, no criminal record. Like, I mean, this is just insane. This is happening. Well, then I get indicted by the grand jury, and my fiance in Alabama gets indicted by the grand jury for 4 felony accounts. I've got a 4th-degree felony charge of inducing a panic, between $7,500 and $100,000. I have no idea. And same charges for my fiance in Alabama. And then interference with custody, which is a 4th-degree felony, and then 2 charges of obstructing justice as 4th-degree felonies. And so, of course, no plea deal. Like, I have not done anything. You had no case. And now I've got August 5th, the next court date is coming up, and it's like they're working together to try to do something to revoke my $50,000 cash-only bond. So I don't know. That's kind of like just the collusion and the craziness is. This is so wrong. Like, the length that they're going to protect a corrupt, abusive man and an incredibly corrupt system where everyone has been bought off. Like, but yeah, that's all.
Well, Virgie, thank you so much. Please go in the queue. Don't leave. I need you to stay in just until we wrap up the program tonight, because I can't have any more coming in, and it's the only way to block them. And I'm sorry to those of you that didn't get a chance to speak, but just know that this is for all of you. This is for all of you. Virgie, thank you. And you can, let me just put you from the stream. Amber, please go right ahead, and please be mindful of the 7 minutes. Thank you. Unmute yourself.
I was with my son's father like maybe 8 months. We were never even married. And he told me one day that our unborn child wasn't his problem. And I decided to leave. And Anyway, I gave birth to our son in August 11th of 2012. And for my son's sake, I called his dad up to the hospital, at which point we had an argument because I wouldn't give my son his last name, and he choked me out. And I remember thinking, please don't drop my baby. And he left. And, he didn't make any attempts to see him or anything for like the next while. The next thing I know, I'm being sued, for custody. And attorneys have been less than helpful. My first attorney lied to me, saying that joint custody was automatic. Nobody told me that I had already had full custody as the mother, and not being married. And then that lasted for, I don't know, in and out of court for 2 years. His house was so horrible, it wasn't fit for visitation. So I had to give him visitation inside of my house, and he would take pictures, and I made an attempt to file for emergency removal. That didn't work out, thank God. But it didn't stop, like the legal harassment and the coercive control and the financial abuse, primarily through the parenting coordinator's office. First parenting coordinator says, I don't like the right of first refusal. So now dad is, denying me my right of first refusal and making it as difficult as possible for me. Which I eventually waived because I thought, okay, well, he's spending time with his granny like 1 day a week. So that's really not a big deal. Hold on. But in the meantime, something happens at his house and my son kind of becomes despondent, and I go to Divis, and the next thing I know, I'm the one being investigated for abuse. And I don't know if that's Divis filed or if that was him trying to control the narrative. That came back unsubstantiated. But nonetheless, I later find out that my son had been locked in the bathroom and left alone in his own feces, and then was later punished for it. When I spoke out against that abuse, of course, it was denied. It was minimized. I'm crazy. I'm making it up. I'm taking my son to counseling. And at this point, I'm still speaking freely. But again, he gets ahead of this narrative, and suddenly I'm the abusive parent. We get a new parenting coordinator. Every time I try to, mention the financial abuse or the legal abuse, it's suddenly I'm losing time or a privilege, or even if it's small stuff like, hey, our schedule is not working for us and dad's not being cooperative, then it's immediately whatever dad gets. And then we had a custody hearing, 3 years ago. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. My son was having difficulty in school and he wasn't able to read. So I initiated testing, and he's been diagnosed with ADHD and subthreshold autism and a sensory disorder. Well, his dad, during our hearing, later says, that I have Munchausen by proxy, I'm mentally unstable, that I'm crazy, and that I've managed to fool 2 psychologists, and I'm interfering with his education because I volunteer at school. And I lost custody of education. We maintained joint custody, but I lost a significant amount of time during that second hearing. And then when school starts the next year, between dad, the teacher, and the principal, they all alienate me. I mean, completely alienate me. I mean, I still have rights, some rights, from the education. And in this time period, the pandemic hits, and he's like leveraging his custody over education to deny me time. he's, not allowing me any extra time. That's for sure. Now at this point, my son is staying with his granny 3 overnights, like 3 24-hour periods.
Ooh.
And so he's not even really with his dad. And this is when, there's nowhere else to go. So I'm really starting to stand up for myself. And the next thing I know, I'm being sued for full custody again. And our previous parenting coordinator died from COVID. I feel like my 7 minutes are really close to being up.
You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, because he was starting to do it. Okay, so I'm being sued for custody again. Now we have a new parenting coordinator. This parenting coordinator threatened me, said that he would make things bad for me because I questioned his character, which is my right to do as an American citizen. At our hearing in his testimony, he used his wife's salon gossip, because I happen to know his wife's stylist, as testimony. Seriously. The teacher that I had been alienated from, no one would talk to me, got up on the stand, and I want to say she lied. I don't know if she lied or repeated the lies that she was told by dad, because no one's having any substantial conversations with me, that I'm neglecting my son, I'm sending him to school smelling like urine. The only pet I have lives in a tank. I'm a licensed cosmetologist and barber. I'm not sending my school ungroomed. And, I didn't even know I had like ADA rights until my friends started to share your videos like just a week or two ago, whenever I just found out that you were real. And we just went back to court. And even though my best friend of 35 years, a teacher, completely was like, you're a great mom, you're a good job, you're competent to make decisions, I literally just found out today that I've lost all of my custodial rights. And I get to see my son 2 overnights a month. I only get 1 full day in that. And that's it. And every time I spoke out against the abuse, a lot of it being gaslighting or financial abuse or the more invisible forms, but every time I tried to raise awareness, I lost something. I had a recording with dad, or where my son admitted to me that dad was locking him in a dark room, and both the parenting coordinator and my own attorney at the time buried that. So, like everyone else, there's more, but I will let you go. And I'm so grateful that I have an opportunity to.
No, I really appreciate
share.
your story. We really appreciate your story. And we thank you very much. And yes, we're going to go right on to Melissa. Thank you for being mindful of the 7 minutes, Melissa. Thank you. And thank you for being on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead.
Awesome. Well, we'll start with just kind of what happened the last 3 years. My spouse, I'm still married to. We've been married for 17 years at that point. My mom had passed away in August of 2019, and I saw the no empathy from my spouse that I never recognized before the 17 years. So I filed for divorce. He had hacked into all of my devices. So my Facebook and my Messenger, my phone, everything. He had put tracking devices on my computer, the kids' iPads, my iPad. We have 3 children together. 2 of our children have autism. Our 3rd child has mental illness issues that we're unaware of until all of this came to a head. When I filed for divorce in October of 2019, I was out of town in September for my mom's memorial. When I came back, he had cleaned out the bank accounts. So the financial abuse got worse. I tried to hire an attorney and use what money that I did have. And then we were coerced into selling our home. So then I had to pack up the house with no help from him. I then didn't know that he had canceled my card until I got back from being out of town for the memorial. I found out that he had canceled the joint account card that I had access to. So I had literally $4 in the account. Prior to this, we had, anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 in our account. So the security that I felt like I had was totally gone. He had contested the divorce, but he did not respond. I had 7 attorneys during this time, and I was not aware of all the laws and such. I was so stressed out. I myself have been diagnosed with PTSD along with my children. They are now 18, 16, and 5. The 2 boys are the ones that have the autism, and our daughter is the one that has the mental issues. She has tried to commit suicide. She has gone to DBT therapy. I've gone to DBT therapy. Our son is now in DBT therapy. Our little son is doing like behavioral therapy. I've always been a stay-at-home mom for the last, I'd say, 15 years. And then I got my children on some waivers to help with the costs of everything that is involved with special needs children. I've been a homeschooling mom the last 9 years. And so all of this came out of left field for me. I didn't understand the system. I didn't understand anything involved with the corruption that happens with the deals that go on behind closed doors, the ex parte hearings, the hearings upon hearings upon hearings that are not on the record. I had no idea. My first attorney, I said that I was going to get an HRO, which is a harassment restraining order here in Minnesota. She had told me to drop it. She only said, well, then you won't get child support. And I didn't understand exactly why it was a good idea. I feel like now it wasn't a good idea because then the judge was unaware. So it did get dismissed. I took the advice of my first attorney. My spouse's attorney, he did not reply back to the divorce. And so I would have had a default judgment from there. I didn't find that out until the last day of my trial. I was given 3.5 days for trial. She stopped our trial a couple different times and heard another case, took a long break, things like that. So it was really hard to refocus. I had to be my own attorney, represent myself for the last 8 months. I still have not gotten any of our marital funds. I'm waiting for a decree at this moment. I do have full custody, temporary custody, but there was nothing in the papers that said anything about legal. I'm driving 200 miles a week. He's driving 50. He's living with a girlfriend that he was cheating on me with, which is a coworker. And she has a criminal record. She's on the domestic violence registry. She also works at the post office like him. So I had severe anxiety about what would happen because I know that he has anger issues. He has been an alcoholic in the past. And I didn't feel safe with my children going there. Until my daughter had attempted suicide, she had said, "Mom, please don't make me go there because I will jump off the balcony." And so then I had to make a choice on not making her go. At that time, she was 15. Our son said the same thing. He said that he would do the opposite. And so I didn't think that that was a good scenario for our children. I'm so sorry about that. So they are currently living together, and we did have a CPS case. I'm so sorry about that. A CPS case under mental abuse. Then it was closed. We had a custody evaluator for 22 months. She was just looking for money, and then she was going to go against me and make up a bunch of lies. I was going to send in a complaint regarding her, and so then she resigned. So none of that was entered into our court record. Our son, that is now 5, has come back with multiple bruises, a head injury, things like this. And I always took him to the doctor just to make sure. He fell in the ice with his dad, and his dad didn't get him medical care. So I'm just want to say that during this process, it was the worst time in my life. And I've met the most awesome people in my lifetime. And we are all part of the group we don't want to be part of, which is the abused. And we are survivors. And I just want to thank you so, so, so much for letting us, give our voices for this time in our lives, because we don't feel heard. It is hidden abuse, and coercive control is real. Financial abuse is real. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
I couldn't hit my mute. Sorry. You're so welcome, Melissa. Thank you so much for your story. And I'm just going to put you in the back queue for a moment. Thank you. Hi, how do you pronounce your first name? Oh, you're mute.
I could go by Joyce, or Ejime. Ejime is actually my legal first name.
Okay, go
Can you hear
ahead,
me?
Joyce.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for having me. I really don't know where to start my story. My story, I hope I can do 7 minutes. My story was, I'm married to a very successful, powerful attorney. In fact, looking at him lately, he's been classified as an elite attorney. He's very well connected. When I say very well, he's a multi-millionaire. He has his own law office here. He also has a law office abroad. He sat down and had meetings with Michelle Obama, Barack Obama. We hosted the vice presidents, Kamala Harris. We've hosted senators. We've hosted in our houses. I'm from LA. He hosted the current running mayor of LA. We hosted him in the house. So I'm just the current running mayor of Los Angeles. He hosted her 4th of July. What's her name? Karen Barnes. So he's well connected. He's a member of Los Angeles Bar Association. He has a bar in DC. I think about 5 states he can practice, and he practices abroad as well. Originally, we're from Nigeria. So in 2007, he filed for a divorce after he had abandoned the house for about 3 months. And by the time he came back, he wanted to get into the house, and I didn't allow him. So he changed the story. He knows the words. He knows what words to use. So we were in court. As soon as we went into court, my attorney had to call for an emergency hearing because of the kids, because he had cut off the light. My kids were young then. I have one of my youngest son is autistic. So he stopped paying for the gas, and I think they were about to cut off the lights so quickly. This is way back in 2007. My attorney had to call for an emergency hearing. And then I was able to get attorney's fees. She ordered for a forensic accountant to look into his business because he was claiming to make about $10,000 a month. And between that period, we quickly reconciled. But knowing what I know today, because the case was not going in his favor, that was why we reconciled. He didn't actually reconcile. So we lived together for another 9-10 years. And in 2016, this is about the time he was now connecting. In 2016, I now filed for legal separation because he was becoming very abusive financially. He was hardly in the country anyway because he was trying to set up his office in Nigeria and also looking for contracts in Nigeria. So I filed for a legal separation in 2016. I was able to get an attorney on contingency. He was able to pay an attorney flat out. And as soon as I filed for the legal separation, the first thing that happened was in order to confuse everybody and to bring a chaos situation, he now pulled out the case from 2007, which makes him become the petitioner. So he refused to pay my attorney fees to the attorneys I got. He told them that we had been separated since we have been separated in 2015, and he was trying to make sure he brings down the law that I don't get anything, trying to say that the marriage was not up to 10 years. So he insisted the money he used in paying for his attorney was post-separation money. So he paid his attorney $10,000 and I couldn't pay my attorney. So after my attorneys had ran me up about $16,000 and, you know, the complication of the other case, they dropped my case. So I was now fighting. I was now in pro se and he had an attorney. So in the meantime, while I was by myself, he quickly did everything he could do in all, I mean, based on what I know now, he was doing things like he was able to get a judgment for divorce by verification. And what I know now, he obviously never sent me any documents. So in me not responding, he got to have a default judgment entered. During this period, our older son was going through some mental health issues. So luckily for me, I was able to come across this lady who came and actually sat down with me, came to my house, so I was drowning, and told me I wasn't actually denied attorney's fees, and told me, you know, she could see what the attorney had written, and she was able to file an ex parte for me to get attorney's fees. So
can I ask you a question?
Can I ask you a question?
Was there any abuse to the children?
The older one is still suffering right now as a result of all this. If I have to fast forward, my older one is severely injured with this.
Physically injured or like emotionally injured?
Both of them. He can't even be a danger to himself and others.
Were they separated? Were they separated from you? Were they separated from you?
No, they were not separated from me. But if you're talking about danger to my son, is during. I'm going fast forward now because of the questions you're asking. Yeah,
of course.
So because of what you've asked, I had an attorney. You know, I got attorney fees. So when my attorney came in, my attorney, what I know now, was working with my ex.
Right.
So I reported to him that my older son now was past age, was aged out, 19. So I told him that my older son is suffering from mental health issues, and he said, "Oh no, that there's nothing the court can do about it. That he's aged out, that he can't do anything." And what do I know? And then I didn't know how to check the laws or whatever. So and he was supposed to be going abroad. That's my older son, to go and school abroad in London. So between that period, he was he was hallucinating, all kinds of things were happening. And, you know, I'm getting him help. I'm showing it to my attorney, and he's still telling me there's nothing we can do. So during the trial,
there's a lot they can do. But it's legal.
Well, that's what he told me.
It's legal abuse syndrome, and then it's all the violations of the Americans with Disability Act, which what I presented to Congress that the courts are not following at all, which is causing all kinds of problems. But your case is a clear case of literally showing like what the attorneys are doing and how they're just fighting against these families.
Well, yeah, it's good you fast forward, because funny enough, you fast forward, I'm dealing with that's the issue you are trying to focus on. I'm actually dealing with it this week, because the previous lady before here, Melissa, we're all working together. So she knows I have actually been losing my mind this week because of where you have fast forward, because there's a lot of corruption, which I've moved away from. But as regard to my older son, like I said, I had him taken to a few doctors, but there was not much time. That was during our trial. But now during the trial, my ex took our son, our older son, who was 19 then, because this is 3 years ago. He took him to the airport, and while he was at the airport, he was obviously having those symptoms again. So he now called me and said, "Oh, Mom, because both of you are stubborn, that those things that are happening to me, they're happening again, and Dad can see it, but two of you refuse to talk to each other." So yes, there's animosity between both of us, but I put down everything. I called the father and said, "Please don't let him go." The father didn't listen to me. Then I begged a friend who normally interacts with us, you know. I told her, please call this man. Tell him.
It's okay.
Tell him then to let my son enter that plane. But he didn't listen. My son said he hugged him and he put him on the plane. This was somebody who was hallucinating. You don't do that.
Yeah.
Then the next day, I came into court. I told the judge, my ex was there and the lawyer, and I said, my son was hallucinating and this man put him on the plane. And they just ignored me like I was mad. Like I was the mad person. They went on with other issues. So my son was in school. All through the period while he was in school, he couldn't concentrate. It was one day after the other. He was in ER. He's in London. I can't go there and I don't have money. And at the end of the day, he ran away and went to Israel and said he doesn't know what is going on with him. And he was deaf. He was there for a long time. So I'm begging him. I tried to make I tried to contact the embassy in Israel and said they should get in touch with him, but my son too won't listen. He didn't answer them because it's over, he's aged out. His father travels up and down all the time. Even while we're in trial, his passport was full. He travels everywhere. Nobody has gone to see my son. So recently, when I say recently, I'm talking about in the last 2 months. No, yeah, in the last 2 months, his birthday was approaching. Instead of his father tries to make him believe that sorry.
No, that you're fine. You're fine.
His father makes him believe that he can't come to the house because of his behavior. So all that puts him off. He knows I'm staying in a 1-bedroom. So he has done everything to make sure our son feels like there's nowhere for him to stay. So when I tell my son, I said, it's okay, you can come back home. Afterwards, when your brother is here, we stay here, we're fine. We manage this 1-bedroom, you can always come home if your dad doesn't want you to come home. But he's using those things to tell and he's like, what will I be doing? Am I going to stay with you in 1-bedroom? Mommy might be dangerous. So as such, he puts it off. So the father bought him I was scared, but thank God he coped. The father bought him a ticket instead to tour around Europe. He's been touring around Europe since June 1st. Just been touring around. He went to Greece. Now he's stopped in Paris. He's just been changing hotels, changing Airbnbs. And I'm like, how long are you going to do this? And once in a while, he's having, I've never seen, I'm just researching. All of a sudden, we're saying, like I told Melissa that this is that's the lady who before here. I was talking to him and I talked about his brother and he said, who is that?
Joyce, I have to do a hard stop at this point. I'm very sorry. I'm not going to be able to get my command to Congress.
Okay.
But
okay.
I'm asking just what county and state, I just don't know if I heard that. What county and state is this case?
I'm Los Angeles, California. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you so much for telling your story today, and we really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Feel free to look us up so you can be a part of what we're doing, okay?
Sure, I will do.
Thank you again. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
I want to introduce here to my left and your right. This is my intake specialist, Hannah. She's been invaluable to me. And I'm just going to ask you just a quick question, Hannah. First of all, 2 questions. Number 1, what is your background? And number 2, what have you been seeing since you've been a part of Punish for Protecting as an intake specialist?
A quick disclaimer. I've been at the park with my kids. I've been multiple places carrying this phone with me. So unfortunately, I have my 3-year-old in the car. So I'm going to be a little skeletal about my personal case, but I can easily answer those 2 questions. My educational background is in government, con law, and I have master's degrees in both areas and one in special education. And what I've been seeing since, well, in my own case has been about 3.5 years going. I entered family court just like a lot of these women say, with the misguided expectation that the truth and that proof and that motherhood were valued. And instead I found out that hearsay and lies and complete inversions of reality are taken as fact, and that quite frankly, the family courts are against women and kids. They do not look out for the best interests of children. Quite frankly, it's exactly the opposite. And for some reason, abusive fathers have total immunity and actually act with impunity abusively through the process, which is quite shocking to find out. What I'm seeing is what I saw in my own case and worse, that when women, and so this has been since about February, directly working with you, Francesca, and a lot of the mothers even here today. I'm in Virginia, so Jackie, Trisha, a whole host of mothers that I have locally here been in contact with, that we do meetups with, and it's just growing and growing. The stories are just ad nauseum, exactly the same. When mothers start disclosing about abuse, whether it's overtly proved or not, the target is on your back right away. And actually, the worse the abuse is, the worse off you are as a mother. And you stand to lose, and attorneys know this too. They'll even tell you sometimes, well, don't say that because you're gonna lose your kids. They know it. So it's absolutely unacceptable what's going on here. What we're doing is creating brain injuries in mothers and children. We're creating learning disabilities. We're creating ADHD. We're creating anxiety and other trauma responses in kids, or we're confounding issues they already have. And these are known facts. So instead of taking the approach that let's make it possible for this overtly abusive father, and in a lot of cases, fathers who don't even have an interest in being fathers, let's force them into a situation and let's make a mother co-parent with these people. They force you into services, psych evals and co-parenting and guardians ad litem, attorneys for the child, all these criminal money-making rackets that indict you over and over and over again where there is no fault that you've done. And I can say in my own case, again, I'm going to be skeletal because one of my kids is in the back seat. My oldest child, who has special needs and medical needs, was exploited and lied about. I was forced to talk about him in court, which was outrageous. Has nothing to do with him. So they exploited his privacy. They deny all these mothers due process. And I wasn't even allowed to have evidence or witnesses at trial. It was a complete snow job. The guardian ad litem overtly lied and manipulated the evidence to fit a narrative. And now you can hear my kid talking in the background. The worst thing that was said about me was that I didn't want to share this child. I had to leave at 9 months pregnant, 4 days before I gave birth to this child, from a very abusive and volatile environment. And that was even used against me. So it's just as Francesca said to, I'm not sure which mother earlier, there's nothing, I think it was Heather, there's nothing you could have done different. You can be the most upstanding citizen. I don't have any abuse. I wasn't even accused of anything. They will create a narrative that fits what the agenda already is. So they can keep throwing services at you, so they can continue to force you into paying for these things and relentlessly fighting for your child, which is what good mothers do. And I want to say one thing too quickly. We're not just talking about ordinary mothers that I see in these situations. We're talking about extraordinary women, women who could have fantastic careers and do it all. And yet we're enslaved to these arbitrary court orders that keep us in bondage, keep us going into court for these frivolous filings and motion after motion. And we have no choice but to go. People lose their jobs, they lose their homes. They can't afford to keep doing it forever. And we have got to stop. And I've always is the case, Francesca. We're both Bible-believing Christians. I believe the Lord is moving in these situations, that I believe a wave of change is coming, and we need to not be afraid to say what's happening here. I'll say the names. Our guardian ad litem, Hethel Chawla, she lied under oath. She's committed perjury. These people do this with absolutely no oversight whatsoever. Hold on a second, my love. One last thing. Another thing about Virginia, and I don't know if it's always the case in all the states, we are not even a court of record. You go into these courts, it's you, it's a judge, it's a guardian ad litem, and the opposing counsel and party, and anything can be said or done. and nobody has a record of it. Nobody's looking. What do you think is going to happen when absolute power is unchecked? We're seeing it right now. That's exactly what we're seeing. And there's no one can come and do any tweaks or educate people or any of that stuff. They're educated. They're doing this knowingly because it keeps the money moving and the wheels spinning. Sorry, I got my guy talking in the background. So, I mean, I see these women, they have protective orders. That so suddenly falls away. The guy is proven to have done physical horrors to children. That trickles away, gets shoved aside. Witnesses moved that are saying the things that need to be said. Their careers destroyed, them defamed. They're saying, no, this guy cannot be alone with this child. And then suddenly they're silenced. They're not allowed in court. There's a gag order. I mean, the playbook is just over and over and over again.
So
Sorry.
Hannah, so that's what you've seen, mother after mother after mother after mother in all your intakes.
Absolutely. And the tears.
And about how many fathers are coming through about, would you say?
I have, and so I want this to be, and you know this, I've talked to 2 fathers, and one of them just sort of, we didn't get a follow-up. I don't know what happened there, and he seems sincere.
Yeah.
Seems sincere. And I know you've got some good fathers, and it's as you've always said, a father who loves his children does not try to keep their mother out of their life.
100%.
A good mother.
That's
and
an abuser.
The good
That's an
fathers,
abuser.
exactly. It's always the case. It's always the abuser. And women, take note. Any man who comes at you with a story about his wife abusing him, that is a red flag, because usually it's him confessing to the things he's done to her. That's usually the case.
Oh, yes.
And it's humiliating for someone to make things up about you. It seems so outrageous.
And narcissism. Well, Hannah, I really do appreciate you. We went way, way over time. So we've done this way over 3 hours, but that's okay because Congress is going to need to hear this over 3 hours. I want to thank all my guests today. Hannah, thank you very much. You can go to the park now.
I love you guys.
Love you. Bye. So I'm just going to read this now to the Congress members that are going to be seeing this. But I want to just say, you cannot deny these stories. I still have women waiting in the queue. I can't take you on, and I do apologize. But I just want to say, you know, we're working for you guys. So if you didn't make it to this, we're working for you. Reach out to Punish for Protecting. The link is below. The link was in the initial introduction when we first start the program. It's going to be again at the end of the program. Share this like crazy, because you can share it with all your senators. You can continue to knock on the doors of your Congress members in Washington, D.C., because what I'm about to read to you, if you don't know this already, as you know, with the Bill of Rights, John Hancock signed that to separate us out from the crown, from the royal crown. And yet the Bar Association is the British Accreditation Registry. So how are we separate? And when we enter into these fake courts, and this is what I educated the Congress members that we did see on July 14th, when we entered into and we spoke to them at the, you know, during the meetings that we did have, and I will be having more virtual meetings with them as well. For one, from Idaho, when I spoke about Sarah Stanley, who is unlawfully jailed and separated from her son, River Stanley, which I gave the names and everything like that. That was a Congressman Richardson. And I just want to let you know that his I think it was his junior staffer or his legislative administrator. That's who it was. She said there's nothing they can do. Well, you're wrong. You are wrong. And she hasn't responded to my email since. So I will be calling her out. And her name was Hannah too, as a matter of fact. So I'm just going to go ahead and read this to our Congress members, because our command to you, our command as the people, and everyone that's been on this and everyone that came with us and everyone that will continue to make sure that this happens, our command to you is that you are going to take down the family court. You're going to strip it of its jurisdiction. And here is how this happens. The Supreme Court ruled that children also have rights that are to be protected by the Constitution. Hammer versus Dagenhart, 1918, Bill of Rights Institute. Congress has gone so far as to eliminate a court's jurisdiction to review a particular case in the midst of a litigation. When you report these child attorneys to their respective states, attorney for child, where you can file, their committees and their commissions, they'll tell you that until the case is over, there's nothing they can do. So these child attorneys, because they know it's a big conglomerate, it's a big circle jerk. Okay, it's a big child trafficking industry. They're all working together. But here it says Congress has gone so far as to eliminate the court's jurisdiction to review a particular case in the midst of litigation. More generally, Congress may influence judicial resolutions by amending the substantive law underlying particular litigation of interest to legislatures. Article 3 of the Constitution establishes the judicial branch of the federal government. Notably, it empowers federal courts to hear cases and controversies. The Constitution further creates a federal judiciary with significant independence, providing federal judges with life tenure and prohibiting diminutions of judges' salaries. But the framers also granted Congress the power to regulate the federal courts in numerous ways. For instance, Article 3 authorizes Congress to determine what classes of cases and controversies inferior courts, like family court, which is the lowest on the total poll. Pardon me. Give me 1 second. I just lost my, inferior courts have jurisdiction to review. Additionally, Article 3's exception clause grants Congress the power to make exceptions and regulations to the Supreme Court's appellate jurisdiction. Congress sometimes exercises this power by stripping federal courts of jurisdiction to hear a class of cases. Hello, I would say this is a class of cases. And like I said, there's more in the queue still waiting to get in. And there's many, many more of you out there, thousands upon thousands upon thousands upon thousands of you. More generally, Congress may influence a judicial resolution by amending the substantive law underlying particular litigation of interest to the legislator. Congress has, at times, used these powers to influence particular judicial outcomes, raising concerns about whether Congress is acting in violation of the doctrine of separation of powers by interfering with the judiciary's power to resolve, now listen carefully, cases and controversies independently. In Marbury versus Madison, the Supreme Court announced that the Constitution, by granting the judicial branch the power to decide cases and controversies, in turn grants the judiciary the power to say what the law is. Sometimes competing with this principle is the understanding that the Constitution empowers a democratically elected branch, Congress. Hello, and we are their bosses. We are their authority. I hope you know your authority, because this is why this has been happening. Okay, because they're lying to the kids in schools, they're lying to the kids in the colleges, telling you that the Constitution no longer is valid, or it doesn't work, or all this nonsense, which is lies. Congress to decide what classes of cases the federal courts may review, as well as to enact legislation that courts may need to interpret. This report highlights a series of Supreme Court rulings that have examined separation of powers-based limitations on the exceptions clause, congressional jurisdiction, stripping, and the ability of Congress to amend laws with the purpose of directly impacting litigation. The court's jurisprudence largely begins with the Reconstruction era case, United States versus Klein, and leads to Pachak versus Zink from the October 2017 term. I'm reading, everyone, if you're going to say I'm practicing law without a license. Nonsense. In Klein, the Supreme Court generally held that Congress may not, by limiting appellate jurisdiction, dictate a rule of decision that undermines the independence of the judiciary. But in the 2016 opinion of Bank Markazi versus Peterson, the court appeared to minimize Klein's significance, noting that while Congress cannot invade the judicial role by dictating how courts rule in a particular case, Congress has significant authority to amend the substantive law in a manner that may alter the outcome of pending litigation. Do you understand what that is? Because you got to know that this is insanity that's been happening. Pardon me a minute. Even in the amendment specifically mentions a particular case. The Pachak litigation highlighted the potential for tension between the judiciary and legislators' powers when Congress removes a class of cases from federal jurisdiction in a way that impacts pending litigation. The Supreme Court ultimately issued a fractured 4-2-3 opinion, adding little clarity to this complex area of law. Now, this is federal, but I'm going to get to family court. Just hang on to your seatbelts, okay? Although 9 jurisdictions agreed that Congress cannot dictate the outcome of a particular case, for instance, by enacting a law that says in Smith versus Jones, Smith wins, a majority of justices could not agree on when a factually neutral law that functionally ends pending litigation in the favor of one party violates Article 3. Can Congress control state courts? Listen carefully, because this is it right here. Congress can, if it chooses, divest state courts of jurisdiction over such claims in order to steer litigation into federal courts where they do have the control. They have more control, but they have control lower and higher, and that's us. We pay their salaries. Exceptions clause of Article 3. Glucksberg 521 U.S. 702, 1997, that the Constitution and specifically the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment protects the fundamental rights of parents to direct the care, upbringing, and education of their children. Congress members that are watching this, hopefully you'll be watching this to the end. Hopefully you will do what we ask you to do, or we will continue to pound the pavement until you do. We command you to strip the family court of all its jurisdiction. As you can see from this previous outrageous amount of mothers and children have suffered tremendously. This affects everyone in our nation, and we want it completely stripped of all rights, and we want recompense back to the families. If you need further help, you can come to myself and any other advocate that has expert background like myself in domestic violence, child abuse, and the Americans with Disability Act. I can read off to you a plethora of federal codifications that they are in violation of every day, causing legal abuse syndrome, causing all kinds of psychological and physical and sexual and emotional and spiritual injury to our families in this country. We no longer will stand for it. Mothers, you are glowing in the darkness. You are expelling the darkness, and you are rising to the occasion. Get up and fight, because we will be the generation of mothers that takes this system down. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you for being here today. I appreciate all the stories that came forth today. And I thank everyone for spreading this message, because we must indeed take the family court down. Thank you.